Welcome to Fantasy Audiobook, Mythical Card Master. Start with the night. Chapter 1. Zitza. The messy current sound from the TV stung his eardrums. The boy opened his confused eyes and looked at the only light source in the dark house. Recently, due to the abnormal activities of dark creatures, the Card Master Alliance issued a Level 4 disaster alert. Residents are requested to avoid going out as much as possible. Memories flooded into his mind along with the sound of the broadcast, and Chu Ming's eyes gradually became clear. I actually traveled through time. In the memory of its predecessor, this place was called Blue Star, and it was a world dominated by cards. Resonating and controlling card battles as the mainstream of the current era. Chu Ming himself was a social worker who was nearly middle-aged. After working overtime and staying up late for 3 days and nights, he finally died and traveled to this world. And his current identity is an 18-year-old quasi-senior high school student at Liming City No. 3 Middle School. I don't know whether to call it lucky or unlucky. Feeling the energetic young body, Chu Ming gradually recalled his previous experiences while sighing with emotion. Just yesterday, my predecessor, who had just grown up, was summoned by the school to go to the Card Master Alliance building to perform the resonance ceremony. The so-called resonance ceremony is the medium and bridge for obtaining cards. As long as you successfully resonate with the cards, you can become a card master. Every year, the Card Master Alliance gathers teenagers who have just turned 18 from major middle schools to conduct a unified resonance ceremony. For Chu Ming, whose parents had died and didn't have much savings, this opportunity was undoubtedly very precious. Because of the high fees required to hold a resonance ceremony, even formal card masters may not be able to afford it. This collective resonance ceremony held by the Card Master Alliance is free of charge. Of course, the predecessor wants to seize the opportunity and become a card master with a high social status in one fell swoop. It's a pity that things didn't go as planned. The predecessor did resonate with the card, but the card he got was an unusable black card. Chu Ming raised the dark card in his hand and looked at the card surface, which looked like a broken mirror. Under the broken mirror, a young man dressed in luxurious clothes could vaguely be seen with panic eyes, gradually being swallowed up by darkness. The boy swallowed by darkness. Quality: hash. Race: human hash. Skill: normal cards can be divided into 7 qualities: white, gray, green, blue, purple, red, and gold, but black cards are not included in this category. The predecessor suffered a strong blow because of this, and he returned to his house in a daze and secluded himself for a day. It was worn by Chu Ming before dawn. How can this be such a tragic word? Chu Ming sighed and walked to the window. His perspective moved upward from the brightly lit bustling city, and a giant transparent tree emitting fluorescence appeared in front of him. The giant tree stands in the sky, stretching out countless branches deep into the sky and spreading into the deep darkness. It's called the ancient tree of time, and it's a long river of history manifested in an alien world, and it's also the source of the card master's power. This alien world is a world of swords and magic, with legendary figures with extraordinary powers such as magicians, knights, and dragons. He also possesses magic items with magical power such as staffs, steel-cutting swords, and dragon-slaying swords. Hundreds of years ago, the ancient tree of time came to Blue Star, and otherworldly powers began to appear in the form of cards. Humans only need to resonate with the cards to get help from otherworldly forces. After resonating with the card, there will be no obvious change in a person's physical strength. But being able to control cards is the biggest difference between card masters and ordinary people. Card master, it is an extraordinary profession that was born after this world was connected to another world. Card masters can drive heroes from other worlds to fight for themselves, and can also use various magical items with miraculous effects. Even the most common white cards have skills far beyond those of ordinary people, and have more magical effects than real objects. As for the highest level cards in the legend, they have the power to drive thunder and lightning, move mountains and seas, transform all things. All kinds of great powers that can only be found in myths. In the long history of other worlds, the history of the entire world has changed from prosperity to decline. Since the fall of the kingdom of gods, the world's status has fallen one after another. After a long period of time, it was finally annihilated in the dark disaster. According to historians, speculation, the reason why the alien world came to Blue Star was probably due to the instinct of the world consciousness to ask for help. Could it be that it originally wanted to ask for help from a higher world, but ended up falling into trouble with Blue Star? Chu Ming's expression gradually became strange, thinking of the dark creatures currently raging on Blue Star. While the alien world brings extraordinary power to the humans of Blue Star, it also brings dark creatures that can destroy everything. When humans first gained extraordinary power, they were still immersed in excitement and unable to extricate themselves. But not long after, dark creatures followed and slapped humans on the face several times, waking everyone up at once. Such monsters emerge endlessly, with different abilities. Some are as strong as steel and have strong vitality. Even if they are hit by a large caliber sniper gun, they can recover quickly. Some move as fast as the wind and as fast as lightning, and humans can only catch a trace of the afterimage with the naked eye. What's more, its body is as big as a mountain, and it can sweep through all human defense facilities with a raised hand. In order to fight against the dark creatures and seek survival, humans gathered all their strength, formed a Card Master alliance, vigorously cultivated Card Master talents, and spent hundreds of years barely resisting the invasion of dark creatures. In the current situation, let alone saving the alien world on the ancient tree of time, just how to expel the dark creatures has left countless Card Masters scratching their heads and scratching their heads. The reason why everyone desires to become a Card Master is not only to pursue extraordinary power and a higher status, but more importantly, to have the ability to protect themselves in this dangerous era. Unfortunately, the black card is not recognized by the Card Master Alliance and does not possess any extraordinary power. Chu Ming looked at the black card in his hand and sighed. There is more than one card that a person can resonate with, and not every time his luck will be so bad. But every resonance requires a resonance ceremony. If he wants to become a Card Master, he must perform another resonance ceremony to resonate new cards. Ordinary people have no way to obtain resonance qualifications and can only spend money to purchase them. However, even the lowest standard resonance ceremony requires 500,000 alliance coins to be held. I had no father or mother before, and I had no money to rely on. The money I earned from working over the years plus some subsidies from schools was only a little over 10,000. He didn't eat or drink, and worked like crazy, and it took him more than 10 years to get it together. When he thought of this, the weight of reality came to his heart, and Chu Ming felt a little tight in his chest. Could it be, just give up like this? Of course it's impossible. As a social worker, he knows best the feeling of being overwhelmed by life and running around for daily necessities. Live aimlessly and numbly all day long. No matter how hard I try, I can't make even half a step forward. After finally breaking away from all the restraints and reviving his life, he made a compromise with reality and returned to a life where he could see the end at a glance. How could this be promised? Breathing the fresh air outside the window, the glory of the ancient trees fell on him. Chu Ming's eyes became more determined. It's decided, let's fight hard. Since you can't become a card teacher before your senior year of high school, you can't be admitted to the Card Teacher University. It's a good time to enter the society early. With the knowledge and experience of the earth in my mind, not to mention becoming rich and powerful, at least I can have a higher starting point than others. Although I don't know if these experiences will be useful, it is better than nothing. Then slowly accumulate, step by step closer to the goal of becoming a Card Master. After thinking for a long time and making plans for the future, Chu Ming leaned against the window and relaxed his nerves. He lowered his head and stroked the broken card, staring at the boy in the card in a daze. How come I'm so unlucky to end up with someone like you? After silently complaining, Chu Ming was about to put down the card. Suddenly the card seemed to be unconvinced and vibrated wildly, and a dazzling golden light appeared on the card surface. The golden light started to magnify from the light spot, gradually illuminating the entire card surface. Chu Ming felt an inexplicable throbbing in his heart, as if he sensed the arrival of something. Is this card resonance? After realizing it, he suddenly raised his head and his eyes widened. The golden light fell from the ancient tree with blazing flames, like a golden crow shining through the world, piercing the night sky and occupying his entire pupils. Before he had time to think, the golden light came to him in an instant. In the flames, a pitch-black card turned into countless light patterns and swept in like a torrent with a thick and simple atmosphere. The light patterns came and went, like words and pictures, and finally came together, leaving a thick stroke on the card that turned into a book. The history books of the years. The book slowly fell into the palm of his hand, and the dissipated golden light reflected Chu Ming's confused face. His Adam's apple rolled and he swallowed hard. What's happening here? Even though he didn't perform the resonance ceremony, he resonated the cards. This situation usually only occurs when the card master is too in tune with a certain card. Could it be that? Is this card destined to me? Chu Ming stroked the yellowed book in his hand, and the leather cover delicately touched his fingertips. History book. Introduction. Understand the past and rewrite the future. The thick and simple breath hit his face, and he couldn't help but feel shocked. There is no quality information. Chu Ming's excitement was interrupted instantly, and a bad feeling arose in his heart. You must know that the same is true for black cards, which cannot display quality information. Quickly turning the history books back into cards, he compared the two. The backs of the two cards are extremely dark, but there is a faint silver light shining on the back of the History of Time card, depicting a pattern of two ancient tree branches connected. Other than that, the History of Time card is like a smooth mirror, no different from a normal card. Seeing this situation, Chu Ming breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, this thing just looks like Heika. If this card that just resonated is also a black card, with this kind of luck, I might as well just find a piece of tofu and kill it. However, although this card is not a black card, it is not within the scope of ordinary cards. Chu Ming's thoughts were confused, and he finally focused on the book. Maybe I can find the answer in there. Taking a deep breath, he slowly opened the cover of the book. Before he could see clearly what was on the page, the fonts on it twisted and fell off, and entered his mind one by one. He stood there blankly for an unknown amount of time before his eyes returned to clarity. Looking down at the book in his hand, Chu Ming's eyes were full of shock. Now he finally understands why this book is called the History of Time, because it is the history of the other world itself. This also means that if changes are made above, the history of the other world will also change accordingly. What a heaven-defying ability this is. With just a few strokes, he can decide the fate of a race, a civilization, and even the entire world. With such a perverted ability, I am afraid that even the bad guy who was called the god in the game in his previous life would scream in surprise. Chu Ming's breathing gradually became faster, and his eyes changed when he looked at the history books. Doesn't that mean that as long as he changes the history of the other world through the history books, he can get the black card in his hand out of trouble and transform into a normal card? It is even possible to help it grow and become a higher quality card, breaking through the limitations of the times. The era of card masters is full of dangers, and ordinary people's lives are difficult. But fortunately, I am cheating. Chu Ming smiled so hard that his face almost went numb. After a while, he returned his attention to the history book. Only then did he notice that almost all the contents of the book had been torn away by an inexplicable force, leaving only one line of words on the new first page. Dark Age 8476, darkness flooded the world and Intinuit died. Intinuit is the name of this alien world, and the Dark Age is the last history of its existence. From the distant era when the gods ruled together, to the time when the world was engulfed by darkness, Intinuit has experienced a total of 4 eras. But no matter which era it is, darkness follows us like a shadow, walking on the continent in different forms. Finally, in the Dark Age, darkness appeared in the form of dark creatures and defeated the alien civilization, dragging the entire Intinuit into the mire of darkness. Looking at the uneven gaps in the history book, Chu Ming's eyes flickered. He was not disappointed because of the missing pages. Although the previous history has been lost, in terms of importance, the history book in his hand is more important. Although I don't know why the previous history was lost, it's good that the last dark era in the history of other worlds still exists. If I can continue to rewrite the history of another world, guide it through the dark era, and lead to a farther future. Continuing to write the history of Intinuit may once again fill the content of the history books. Cards can change your destiny. Changing the future of a world. Chu Ming licked his dry lips. It's awesome just thinking about it. Closing the window, he went back to bed and thought. The history of time has such a powerful ability, and it must not be discovered by others. Although the Card Master Alliance maintains social order, there are still a few incidents of cards being stolen every year. After the Card Master who had his cards forcibly stripped away lost his connection with the cards, he suffered severe mental damage at best, or died on the spot at worst. Although the deprived cards still cannot be used without a certain degree of compatibility, what if? It is precisely because of this kind of luck that many card masters take huge risks to grab cards. Recalling the scene where the cards resonated just now, Chu Ming looked happy. Fortunately, only the owner of the card can see the light that resonates with the card. Otherwise, based on the dazzling light when the history book appears, someone will probably touch it at the door of their house soon. Since the history of time was resonated without the help of the resonance ritual, even the Card Master Alliance official could not find out whether he had resonated a new card. This matter is probably his only secret. In this way, as long as he doesn't tell, no one will know at all. As for how to explain the changes in the black card in his hand after using the history book to change history, that is even simpler. In fact, it is not uncommon for cards to experience a jump in quality or a decline in quality. The quality changes usually occur because the card master and the card have a deeper compatibility, or the card awakens after being exposed to the knowledge of Blue Star. And this change in quality will have an impact on other worlds. However, ordinary changes are not enough to shake the heavy inertia of the entire history of another world. Only a very small number of card changes can disturb the history of the other world. And this historical disturbance does not necessarily mean it is a good thing. Hundreds of years ago, card masters were aware of the impact of card changes on other worlds, and tried to interfere with history by cultivating cards. With the unremitting help of the card masters, Intinuit's demise was successfully advanced 3,000 years. I kind of want to complain, but I don't know where to start. Chu Ming shook his head and opened the history book in his hand. There's no need to worry about the exposed issues now. The reasons for card changes are endless, so you can just find any reason at that time. The more important thing now is to test the ability of the history book. Looking at the only line of words on the page, with the help of the book, Chu Ming concentrated his mind and transformed into a white feather pen. Just when he was about to start writing, a piece of information came into his mind. Lack of historical carrier. Chu Ming Fu reached his heart, looked at the black card in his hand, and carefully placed it on the page. As soon as the card fell off the page, it turned into a picture on the book. The pen tip slowly came down, and his vision blurred. Time: Dark Age 8412. Location: Rodin Kingdom, Black Snake Town. Vector: Young Andrew. A sudden trance occurred, and Chu Ming traveled through the years and returned to 64 years ago before the world was destroyed in the blink of an eye. This is also the point in time when the cards still exist. Baron Harold, do you still need to continue bleeding? Quote. The conversation like the buzzing of mosquitoes reached Chu Ming's ears, and he woke up from his dazed state in an instant. What medieval bloodletting therapy? After complaining, he immediately understood his current situation. The identity of the card boy Andrew is the only son of Baron Harold of Black Snake Town. He is currently in the Baron Castle in Black Snake Town, undergoing bloodletting treatment from the barber. This card is actually a young baron. His origin is quite good. According to historical records, the national political structure of the Dark Ages was similar to that of European countries in the Middle Ages, and the old male aristocratic system of princes, uncles and sons was still used. In this era where extraordinary knowledge is monopolized by nobles, if Kaka is a commoner, it will be difficult for him to get rid of historical inertia and rewrite history. Teacher Lu once said, adaptation is not random editing, and drama is not nonsense. The same goes for rewriting history. He cannot fabricate things that do not exist out of thin air in history, nor can he make history violate logic. Therefore, if he wants to change the future, he must use the historical carrier as the core of disturbing history, let the butterflies flap their wings, and then set off a hurricane that disturbs history in Intinuit. While thinking, new memories flooded into his mind, and he knew the reason why Andrew became a black card. A few days ago, Andrew went hunting in the countryside and was surprised to encounter a dark creature. He was so frightened that he lost his soul. This is a manifestation of being invaded by darkness, and because of this, Andrew was transformed from a lowest level white card into a black card. According to normal history, Andrew had died long ago, and what is left now is just an empty shell. Although I sympathize with your situation, I still thank you for making room for me. Chu Ming mourned silently in his heart. He could feel that his consciousness would soon completely occupy this body and wake up from his deep sleep. Mr. Harry, continue bleeding. This is the only chance to save Andrew. Still letting go. Baron Harold's voice reached Chu Ming's ears, and he was immediately frightened. Chu Ming forced open his eyelids, which were as heavy as lead, and raised his right hand to stop the barber who was bleeding. Wait, I woke up. He struggled to squeeze out a few words from his dry mouth and looked outside the bed. The candles flickered in the room, and the orange light dispelled the darkness. In the intertwining of firelight and shadow, 3 people appeared in front of him, Baron Harold with gloomy eyes, the priest of the church and the bloodletting barber. Mr. Harry, stop. Baron Harold showed an expression of joy, and even the sharp eyes of an eagle softened a bit. After stopping the bloodletting, Chu Ming allowed the priest to check his body. After chatting briefly with Harold for a few words, he found peace on the pretext of rest. If I put in more blood, I might have to fall out of the writing state. Chu Ming smiled bitterly, stretched out his right hand that had not been harmed by the blade, and summoned the history book of the years. I don't know whether it was written in too short a time or whether the resurrection of young Andrew could not disturb history. There is still only one line in the history book. As for the page pattern, thanks to Andrew's resurrection, the black card has undergone new changes. Aristocratic boy Andrew. Quality: white, gray, green, blue, purple, red, gold. Race: human race. Skill: archery mastery elementary. It finally became useful. Chu Ming sighed and focused on the quality information. White is the lowest quality of a card. It only requires the card character to have a skill or the item to have some characteristics. At the end of the dark age he is currently in, the cards that a card master can resonate with cannot exceed the blue level. If ordinary card masters want to obtain higher quality purple, or even red and gold, they must resonate with cards from more ancient times. Just wanting to go back to the origins against the historical trend not only requires more advanced resonance rituals, but also has extremely high requirements for the card master himself. The path Chu Ming wants to take is different from that of ordinary card masters. Others go back to pick up the legacy of past history, but he wants to go forward, open up a new era, and obtain new cards. In human terms, while others are still digging for gold in the lottery pool, he is starting to prepare to open a new lottery pool. This is where the dominance of the history books lies. Pulling back his wandering thoughts, Chu Ming began to think about his future plans. At the end of the Dark Age, extraordinary power was weak. Now the only profession that can use extraordinary power is the knight. Baron Harold always has a son, and Andrew is his only heir. With this condition, it should be easier for me to become a knight. It's easy to say, but there are still many difficulties in implementing it. The first is Baron Harold's uncertain character. Although he loves his son Andrew very much, when it comes to the subject of Andrew wanting to become a knight, his face changes instantly and he angrily refuses. Although I don't know why this is happening, perhaps we can use this dark creature attack as an excuse to use Harold's hatred of dark creatures to persuade. Chu Ming nodded slightly and remembered another difficulty. That is the crazy knight who frequently appears in the real world. Surprisingly, this type of human knight does not appear in the form of cards, but as dark creatures. They are crazy and bloodthirsty, irrational, and act according to instinct. They give card masters more headaches than ordinary dark creatures. These crazy knights cannot communicate with normal people, and historians cannot learn from other card characters at the end of the Dark Age why they turned into dark creatures. There are even some normal knights who directly refuse to communicate with the card master, as if they will immediately fall into darkness as long as they tell the reasons for the formation of the crazy knights. If you want to become a knight, you must consider this issue. But the good news is that even if the historical carrier dies or is damaged, it will not affect the cards in the real world. As long as I can enter the writing state, I can start over again. Through trial and error over and over again, I will find out the reason for the formation of the crazy knight. This way you can avoid falling into darkness and even rewrite the future. After thinking for a long time, Chu Ming fell into a deep sleep surrounded by sleepiness. 3 days later, Chu Ming moved his loose body and stepped out of the room for the first time. On the dark spiral staircase, torches burning unknown animal fat emitted a pungent smell. He walked down the stone steps, aiming for the training ground for night training, where Baron Harold would usually be. Passing through the dim corridor and facing the bright light, Chu Ming walked out of the Baron's castle. On the street, several civilians with dark faces and thin clothes wearing coarse linen clothes were running busy stepping on the black mud. Looking at both sides of the street, the surrounding residential houses are unevenly distributed and scattered in a haphazard manner. It looks like no planning was considered at the beginning of construction. After seeing Chu Ming come out, the nearby civilians bowed down and saluted in fear. "Good morning, Master Andrew." Chu Ming didn't speak, just shook his head casually, then went to the stables and led a strong black horse towards the training ground outside the city. After leaving the town, there was a dilapidated scene outside. There are dilapidated buildings everywhere around the wheat fields. Many mills and farmhouses attacked by dark creatures have no time to repair and can only be shelved temporarily. It was early autumn, and with several days of continuous drizzle, horses' hooves easily splashed sewage and mud on the road. In order to take care of the people walking on both sides of the road, Chu Ming deliberately slowed down the horses' walking speed. The expected mud didn't come, and several farmers had strange eyes, raised their heads and watched Chu Ming Yuan go. After taking some time, he finally walked across the farmland to the training ground next to the forest. Drink, drink. The sound of drills echoed on the training ground, and the knights were sweating in short-sleeved casual clothes. Baron Harold stared at the knights sternly from the side, as if he would scold them immediately if they made any mistakes. After Chu Ming tied the horse, he did not interrupt the knights' training rashly, but waited patiently outside the training ground. After a while, under the frequent glances of the knights, Baron Harold finally spotted him. When he saw his son, who was strictly prohibited from contacting any knight affairs, coming to the training ground, he subconsciously wanted to get angry, but when he thought about Andrew recovering from a serious illness, he could only hold back his ugly face and came to him. "Andrew, what did I say? Didn't I tell you to stay away from the training ground?" Baron Harold's slightly questioning voice reached Chu Ming's ears. He was neither humble nor arrogant, and raised his head to look at Chu Ming. "Father, I want to be a knight." "Impossible." Baron Harold refused without thinking. Just when he wanted to preach to Andrew, Chu Ming said something heartbreaking. "My dear father, do you wish to see me sit and wait for death in the face of dark creatures?" Baron Harold's eyes hesitated, and when he was about to refuse again, he was interrupted by Chu Ming. "Please give me a chance. If I really am not qualified to be a knight, I will give up on my own." Baron Harold was obviously moved. In fact, he did not believe that his pampered son had the perseverance to become a knight. To become an excellent knight, talent and hard work are indispensable. Andrew has neither of these. Since Andrew is so insistent, he may be able to endure hardship and retreat on his own. After hesitating for a while, Baron Harold took a scroll from his belt and put it into Andrew's palm. "This is the Universal Knight Secret, the foundation of knight power. I'll give you a month. If you can't get started, it's better to give up as soon as possible. Also, starting tomorrow at 5 o'clock in the morning, don't forget to come to the training ground to assemble." After saying that, Baron Harold returned to the training ground without looking back. Looking at the man's leaving figure, Chu Ming opened the history book with a smile on his face. General Knight's Secret Technique. Quality: gray, white, gray, green, blue, purple, red, gold. Skill: Life Enhancement Intermediate. As soon as the sheepskin scroll fell into Chu Ming's hands, he felt the changes in the history books. Sure enough, next to Andrew's card was a card named Universal Knight Secret Technique. I didn't expect that items obtained in other worlds could also be included in the history book in the form of cards. Doesn't that mean that I can obtain more cards by practicing in other worlds? Chu Ming put away the history books, found a tree, and sat down to think. With Andrew's own talent and qualifications, it is completely impossible to master the Universal Knight Secret method in a month. It seems that Baron Harold is deliberately making things difficult and doesn't want Andrew to become a knight. It seems that we need to rely on the power of history books. Although the history books of the years have many restrictions, they cannot write about events such as Andrew being frightened to open up the Rendu lineage and becoming a martial arts genius, which is completely inconsistent with the logic of the other world. But sometimes the achievements of genius require a little luck. Thinking of this, Chu Ming reopened the history book and wrote on it. In the year 8412 of the Dark Age, Andrew and Baron Harold agreed to learn the Universal Knight's secret technique for a month. The boy practiced hard, suddenly had an idea, and got started by luck. The quill left the page, and the handwriting he was writing on began to tremble. Chu Ming looked at the struggling font nervously. Just when he thought he was about to fail in writing, the font emitted a golden light and actually became fixed. Success. Sure enough, only such elusive things as luck and inspiration can escape the limitations of historical logic. If the writing state only allows him to move step by step within the fixed trajectory of history. So this active writing allowed him to break out of various restrictions and directly cheat on historical figures. Chu Ming sighed a few words, and suddenly felt a surge of exhaustion. It was obvious that his body needed to rest. History has been made, and the characters will follow the history I wrote. Then I can exit the writing state now to take a rest, hang up and let the cards practice on their own. Chu Ming held the history book in his hand, and with a thought, the surrounding pictures began to shake. 1 second he was under the big tree outside the training ground, and the next second he was directly back in his bedroom. In front of him, the history book floated out of thin air, and the quill was automatically rewriting what Chu Ming had just written. By the time the pen stops, the historical process will have advanced to a month later. It seems I don't have to worry about it for the time being. Let's take a good rest first. After taking a look at the clock that reached 3 o'clock in the morning in the real world, Chu Ming lay down on the bed and fell into a deep sleep. At noon the next day, when the sun was shining on his buttocks, he woke up from his sleep. After briefly washing up and having lunch, he came to the History of Time book again and entered the writing state. Black Snake Town, training ground. Chu Ming regained control of Andrew's body, and just when he was about to make a move, a new memory flooded into his mind. Over the past month, the human machine Andrew has been working diligently every day, getting up earlier than a chicken, going to bed later than a pig, and insisting on going to the training ground to practice secret techniques every day. It's just that Andrew's talent and qualifications are too weak to grasp the key points, and his progress has been limited in the past month. However, his diligent and perseverance performance also impressed Baron Harold and the knights at the training ground. After all, the talent is not enough. Baron Harold sighed, feeling disappointed but also a little happy at the same time. All the knights present also expressed regret. What a pity. Master Andrew is the hardest working knight I have ever seen. Yes, if I had this kind of perseverance, Master Harold would have sent me to the Knight Academy long ago, ha ha ha. Andrew, you have failed. Baron Harold came to Andrew, and looked at him calmly. It's time to give up the way of knighthood. No, father, the time is just right. Chu Ming, who regained consciousness, chuckled lightly, inserted the iron sword into the sand, and straightened his body. Suddenly, inspiration came like a tide, and he suddenly understood many nodes in the secret method that he had not understood before. In just a few seconds, he had mastered the secret technique. Chu Ming's upright body suddenly heard the crisp collision sound of bones, and new blood roared around his body. Immediately afterwards, his heart vibrated as powerfully as a thunderous drum, and invisible ripples came out of his body, bringing up bursts of dust. Apprentice Knight Andrew. Quality: gray, white, gray, green, blue, purple, red, gold. Race: human race. Skill: life enhancement elementary. Chu Ming clenched his fists, feeling the abundant strength in his body, and couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. On the card, because Chu Ming only had memories of the original archery specialization skills and was not familiar with them in actual combat, they quickly regressed a lot and disappeared. However, bow shooting is not very useful for knights. It was only practiced by Andrew when he was hunting for fun. There is nothing to regret if it is gone. How, father, am I worthy of becoming a knight? Baron Harold stood there with a heavy face and remained silent for a long time. Even if he practiced the Universal Knight's secret technique, it took him half a year to get started. He didn't expect that his always pampered son could persist until now, and he succeeded in just 1 month. With such perseverance and talent, he no longer has any reason to stop Andrew from becoming a knight. Maybe this is God's will. The Baron sighed and nodded to Chu Ming under the gaze of everyone. I recognize your determination, but you still have a long way to go before you want to become an official knight. After speaking, the man patted Chu Ming on the shoulder. Starting today, I officially invite you to join the Black Snake Knights. Are you ready? Baron Harold looked directly at Chu Ming and stretched out his right hand. I'm ready. Without any hesitation, Chu Ming took the man's right hand. Suddenly, he fell into a trance. From this moment on, he felt as if he had some kind of connection with another world. In the blink of an eye, 3 months passed by. Snowflakes are falling, winter has quietly arrived. As usual, Chu Ming followed a group of knights to practice secret techniques and swordsmanship on the training ground. Baron Harold is right. To become an excellent knight, hard work and talent are indispensable. With Andrew's stupid mind and lazy character, it should have been said that he had nothing to do with the knights. But what these alien knights don't know is that this young man's body has already had a new owner. And he still brought it with him. In the past few months, with the help of the history books, Chu Ming worked hard to practice step by step. The speed of practice is not to mention how fast it is, but the advantage is stability. Compared to the person he was 3 months ago, he is already a completely different person. His rapid growth also made all the knights present feel incredible. The knights had to admire this young knight who was much younger than them. It was also during the day-to-day training that Chu Ming established good relationships with almost all the knights of the Black Snake Knights. After all, Andrew is the heir of Baron Harold. If he doesn't flatter him more and isolates him, he will do such stupid things only if his head is kicked by a donkey. In the evening of this day, after training, Chu Ming rode on his beloved little black horse and returned to the Baron's castle in the light snow. Due to the arrival of winter and the lack of blood food, the dark creatures hiding in the nearby forests became more and more manic. In just a few days, they had attacked Black Snake Town many times. In the past few days, Baron Harold has been busy cleaning up the dark creatures near the town. He has not been to the training ground for a long time. Chu Ming was very aware of Baron Harold's routine of leaving early and returning late, so he had no intention of waiting for him to come back. Just when he wanted to exit the riding state and let the robot Andrew do his own thing, there was a knock on the door. It's me, Harold. Baron Harold's magnetic voice sounded from outside the door. Chu Ming quickly stood up and welcomed the man holding Xiaoshui outside the door. Father, it's so late, what can I do? He asked doubtfully, and then he saw the bright black light armor in the man's arms. Harold put the armor on the table, took a sip of hot wine, and explained, "This is the knight's uniform and knight's armor that I asked the tailor and blacksmith to sew for you respectively. If it doesn't suit you, tell me." Quote. Chu Ming picked up the knight uniform, and an extra card suddenly appeared in the history book. Knight suit. Quality: white, gray, green, blue, purple, red, gold. Skill: defense elementary. Before he could thank him, Harold took off the sword from his waist and solemnly handed it over. This black snake sword was passed down from our ancestors. Today I will hand it to you. I hope you can cherish it. Chu Ming took the sword and took an honest look at the history books floating next to him. He has tested it. Whether in reality or in another world, neither machines nor human eyes can see the existence of the history book. Only when the history book of time is transformed back into the card body, other card masters can see it. After the long sword belonged to Chu Ming, a new card appeared next to the Andrew card in the history books. On the card, the hilt and grid of the long sword are entwined by two lifelike black snake eagles. The black snake opened its mouth wide, revealing its jet black fangs, and there seemed to be a red light flashing in its eyes. Black snake long sword. Quality: gray, white, gray, green, blue, purple, red, gold. Skill: black snake killing. When using the long sword to cause damage, the black snake's killing effect can be triggered, causing additional bleeding effects. Chu Ming's eyes lit up. Is this the most powerful sword in the village? It's really good. After thanking him, Chu Ming put on his knight uniform and light armor, put the black snake sword on his waist, and returned to Baron Harold. The man stood up, his eyes softened, and he said with satisfaction, "Not bad, it fits just right." The two chatted for a few words about home affairs. Chu Ming pretended to be casual while adjusting his clothes and asked casually. Is something going to happen recently? Harold was stunned and shook his head. Just some dark creatures. After the two chatted for a few more words, Baron Harold was ready to leave. Before leaving the room, the man reminded, starting from tomorrow, you will follow the Black Snake Knights to the forest to sweep away dark creatures. Remember, don't be late. After saying that, the man disappeared into the snow. Chu Ming looked at the direction where the man disappeared and murmured. Is it really okay? How can it be? There are still 64 years before the other world will be swallowed up by darkness. Before the storm comes, even if the world is peaceful, there will be changes. Besides, he has spent more than 4 months in another world, but he is still confused about the birth of the crazy knight. His thoughts were spinning, and Chu Ming took a deep breath. No matter what happens, there is nothing wrong with trying to improve your strength. As long as we are strong enough, we can prevent all tragedies from happening. If you really can't handle it, you'll have to try it all over again. After thinking for a while, he took out the history book and focused on the Andrew card. Apprentice Knight Andrew. Quality: gray, white, gray, green, blue, purple, red, gold. Race: human race. Skills: life enhancement elementary, sword mastery elementary. After a long period of arduous training, his swordsmanship has already been mastered. There is no need to worry too much about the actual battle tomorrow. And his understanding of the secret method is getting deeper and deeper. Maybe in a few years, the cards will change again. I hope I can catch up. Extinguishing the candle, Andrew fell into a deep sleep. Chu Ming took advantage of this time to quit writing and went out to have dinner. When he entered again, the other world ushered in the next morning. Chu Ming packed up his equipment, mounted the black horse, and with the dim moonlight on his shoulders, facing the cold wind, he arrived at the edge of the forest where the knights gathered. Although it was 6 o'clock in the morning, there were already several knights waiting at the destination. After seeing Andrew coming, these knights greeted him friendly. Chu Ming responded with a smile, and then sat cross-legged on the ground and began to practice under the gaze of everyone. As time passed bit by bit, the golden morning light broke through the haze and shone into the dark forest. After all the knights arrived, Baron Harold did not dare to waste the day. After distributing dry food, he gave an order and led a team of dozens of knights into the forest. The group of people went deep into the forest, stepping on dead branches and leaves covered with snow. Due to the inconvenience of riding in the forest, Chu Ming did not take the black horse with him. Under the leadership of Baron Harold, everyone walked for half an hour and arrived in front of a hunter's cabin. Their main mission during this trip is to clean up the dark creatures that have invaded the forest near the town, and to find traces of missing hunters along the way. Chu Ming was walking in the middle of the team. When he saw a group of knights stopping, he looked curiously towards the hunter's cabin. I saw a bloody corpse lying quietly on the snow, half buried by the thick snow. Chu Ming's face gradually turned ugly. He didn't come back to his senses until the knight put away the hunter's body. It's very confusing, isn't it? John, the old knight beside Chu Ming, squinted his eyes and said, the forest is obviously so dangerous, but there are still hunters who dare to hunt here. Chu Ming nodded hesitantly. The old knight John said happily, this is a good place. You can often see traces of snow deer looking for food. The meat of wild snow deer is firm and rich in oil, and its fur can be used to sew sweaters for ladies. In Clay County, a small snow deer can be sold for 3 gold. You must know that 3 gold is enough for an ordinary family to live for a month. Why are you so familiar with these? Chu Ming expressed his doubts. Haha, young master, you don't know something. Old man, before I became a knight, I once joined a hunting team. Later, many people in the team died due to dark creatures and were forced to disband. My best friend was also buried deep in the mountains. John fumbled for a nearby hunter's trap. His tone was flat and his emotions could not be heard. Condolences. Chu Ming was silent for a while and suddenly asked, then do you know the rumors about any treasures in this forest? Treasure. John stopped what he was doing and thought carefully. I have never heard of treasure, but I have heard from other hunters before that there seems to be a glowing magic herb deep in the forest. I don't know if it is true. Fake. Magical herbs seem to be rare materials at the end of the Dark Ages. Chu Ming's eyes flashed. and after thanking him, he summoned the history book. Since time can affect the ethereal luck and inspiration, it should also be useful in finding treasures. After thinking for a while, he tried to write a paragraph in the history book. In Dark Age 8412, Andrew followed the knights to the forest to clean up dark creatures. He was lucky enough to find the lost treasure. The pen tip left the book, and the characters on it began to shake violently. But this time it didn't go so smoothly. After struggling for a few seconds, the font turned into ashes. However, Chu Ming was not discouraged and rewrote a paragraph in the book. In Dark Age 8412, Andrew followed the cavaliers to the forest to clean up dark creatures. He was lucky enough to find a magical plant that was passed down by the hunters orally by chance. The font trembled slightly, then became fixed, and the writing was successful. Sure enough, only things that really exist can be recognized by history. And it's really possible to use luck to hunt for treasure. After confirming this, Chu Ming's mind gradually became more active. Since the fall of the kingdom of the gods in another world, many artifacts have also fallen on the continent. Although most of the artifacts have lost their power as time goes by, there will always be some left that can be used. Even if the artifact cannot be found, it can be used to find lesser magical items, as long as you know the approximate name and location of the item. After thinking for a while, Chu Ming continued to follow the team deep into the forest. 2 hours later, after a long journey, they finally saw the first dark creature of the day. A 4-meter-tall bloodthirsty wild boar with blood-red eyes and 4 tusks. This guy is not easy to deal with. Surround him. Following Baron Harold's order, the knights formed a circle and slowly surrounded it. The bloodthirsty boar, which had lost its mind, lowered its body, sprayed water vapor from its nostrils, and randomly selected a lucky knight and bumped into it. Before the knight could react, he flew backwards. Although he was not injured, the sudden impact left him stunned. Don't let him get away. The knights ran in the direction of the bloodthirsty boar's breakout, swinging their swords and leaving wounds of varying depths on its body. Chu Ming fought against a dark creature for the first time. He did not underestimate the enemy. He just took advantage of the chaos to scratch a few wounds on the wild boar and then stayed away from the wild boar. After witnessing the power of human knights, even bloodthirsty wild boars will inevitably feel fear. The bloodthirsty boar roared wildly, and a thin layer of blood suddenly appeared on its body. It knocked the surrounding knights to the ground with great force and fled deep into the forest. Thanks to his foresight just now, Chu Ming was not harmed and immediately followed Harold. Under the relentless pursuit of the knight, the wild boar suffered more and more wounds and blood flowed all over the floor. 10 minutes later, the bloodthirsty wild boar fell to the ground due to excessive blood loss. Black blood dripped onto the white snow and emitted black smoke. Are all dark creatures so difficult to deal with? Seeing the bloodthirsty boar's strong vitality, Chu Ming couldn't help but click his tongue. Baron Harold glanced at him, as if he was afraid that he would misunderstand, and replied, "It's just that this bloodthirsty boar has strong vitality and is more difficult to deal with. The strength of ordinary dark creatures is even lower than yours." Quote. In the forest, the knights held their swords in front of their chests and watched the wild boar twitching on the ground with caution, preparing to wait until he was completely dead before moving forward. As if aware of human intentions, the wild boar, which pretended to be dead, howled angrily and launched a final charge towards the knights with all its strength. Somehow, under the influence of an invisible force, the wild boar actually turned slightly and headed towards Chu Ming. Not good. Baron Harold suddenly realized something. His expression changed, and he looked at where Chu Ming was. The man waved his sword and shouted, trying to push Chu Ming away, but he was still a step too late. The next second, Chu Ming was knocked out and rolled down the mountain stream. "Hurry and save people," Baron Harold shouted with his eyes red. The knights acted quickly and ran to the mountain stream to think about going down. At this time, Chu Ming's voice came up. "I'm fine, wait until I get up." At the foot of the mountain stream, Chu Ming grinned, pulled out the magic herb beside him, and limped up. "Hiss, the history books, you call this overwhelming luck. It almost made me quit writing. However, this life-strengthened body is really resistant to beatings." Even after he fell like this, he was only slightly injured. When he returned to the team above, the concerned Baron Harold ran over immediately. Although Chu Ming emphasized many times that he was fine, Baron Harold, who had a tough attitude, still asked the knight to take him out of the forest early. After returning to Baron Castle, Chu Ming took out the magic herb and opened the history book. Blood essence grass. Quality: gray, white, gray, green, blue, purple, red, gold. Skill: chi and blood replenishment. Nice one. Chu Ming's eyes lit up. With the help of blood essence grass, he is sure to improve his strength to the level of a formal knight within 3 years. Next, continue practicing and strive to reach the level of a formal knight. It would be too embarrassing to be knocked away by a wild boar. As spring passed and autumn came, the quill kept writing on the history books, and the time in the other world soon came 2 years later. For Chu Ming, he just spent an ordinary day during the summer vacation. After dinner, he couldn't wait to get into writing mode. Dark Age 8414. Black Snake Town, at the entrance of the mill. Chu Ming swung his sword to chop off the head of the dark creature, and then memories came flooding back. In the past 2 years, Andrew's secret method has progressed rapidly after taking the blood essence grass, and his physical fitness is about to catch up with the official knights in the Cavaliers. Since he had been injured by a wild boar before, it took Andrew a month to convince Baron Harold to join the team to clean up the dark creatures again. It is precisely with the training of actual combat that his swordsmanship has become more and more exquisite, and he can now apply it freely in battle. Chu Ming opened the history book and took a look. Sure enough, Card Andrew's sword mastery skill was one step ahead of the life enhancement and reached the intermediate level first. Wiping the corrosive black blood off the long sword, and after the farmer burned the corpses of the dark creatures, he mounted the black horse and returned to the training ground. Master Andrew, why are you here? A middle-aged knight greeted him warmly. Chu Ming smiled, did not answer, and focused his attention on the priest and several young people behind him. The priest looked familiar to him. He seemed to be the one who had been guarding his bedside when he first entered the other world. Knight Gehai, what are you doing, and who is this priest? The middle-aged knight Gehai patted his head and whispered in his ear. Master said, dark creatures have appeared more and more frequently in recent years. The Cavaliers are a bit overwhelmed, so they want me to lead the new guys. Just in time for Pastor Lyle to come down and check on their physical condition. Chu Ming showed a look of sudden realization. Of course he knows why there are more and more dark creatures. Isn't this why the other world will be swallowed up by darkness in a few decades? As time goes by, the number of dark creatures will only increase, until finally, the entire town is destroyed. Behind Knight Gehai, Pastor Lyle waved to Chu Ming in a friendly manner. But Chu Ming still clearly remembered the bloodletting treatment that day, so he naturally didn't have a good attitude towards him. He just replied lightly, then found an empty space and sat cross-legged. The universal secret method of knighthood is the most widely spread practice method in the way of knighthood. In ancient books, the earliest general knight's secret method also has a matching breathing method, which must be supplemented with secret medicine during practice. And you can easily enter the state of cultivation without resorting to meditation. Unfortunately, as the alien status continues to decline, the extraordinary power also declines. The knight's breathing method has long been ineffective, and even the magic herbs needed for the secret medicine have disappeared. Nowadays, knights practice the general knight's secret method entirely through talent and perseverance. In more than 2 years, he has been practicing to the point where he is close to being a formal knight, and he can already be described as a genius. Thoughts flowed, and after a few minutes, Chu Ming gradually calmed down and entered a meditative state. I don't know how much time passed, but there was a change in the history books floating beside him, and the Andrew card gradually showed new changes. Chu Ming, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly heard a clicking sound from his body. Under the influence of the secret technique, he experienced a second growth, and his height couldn't stop rising. Immediately afterwards, the energy and blood in his body began to erupt, his skin turned red like a cooked lobster, and his heart beat like a drum. After a few minutes, when the power gradually stopped growing, the vision in him gradually returned to normal. Chu Ming exhaled, opened his eyes, and revealed his brilliance. I finally reached the level of an official knight. Official Knight Andrew. Quality: dark gray, white, gray, green, blue, purple, red, gold. Race: human race. Skills: Life Strengthening Intermediate, Sword Mastery Intermediate. When a card reaches Gray quality, not only will the gap between different qualities become wider and wider as it goes up, but the gap between qualities will also become wider and wider. Therefore, after Gray quality, the intensity of cards of the same quality will be distinguished by the depth of color. With the strength of Andrew Card's dark gray quality, he is probably already the mainstay of Black Snake Town. If you want to continue going up, you must either ask Baron Harold for a new secret method, or leave the town and go to the Knight Academy. But even though Andrew has been a knight for more than 2 years, Baron Harold's attitude towards knights is still somewhat intriguing. If you don't know the reason, then if you continue to move forward, you won't even know that you have stepped into a trap. Maybe it's time to try asking Baron Harold about the crazy knight. After standing there and thinking for a while, Chu Ming suddenly felt a little uneasy, and even exited the writing state without being harmed. The screen kept twisting and he soon returned to the room. How is this going? Chu Ming held his head, feeling a little uncomfortable. This was the first time that he had passively exited the writing state, and he had no idea what was going on. After resting for a while, just as he was about to turn on the lights in the house, a frightened female scream came into his ears from outside the house. Dangerous. Chu Ming looked serious and quickly took down the card from the history book. The knight card in his hand turned into a ball of light and appeared in front of him in human form. Please give instructions from the card master. Andrew, a man-machine with a young appearance and resolute eyes, was wearing black armor, with a black snake sword at his waist, and knelt on one knee in front of him. Be on guard all around and protect me. After giving the instructions, Chu Ming took out the only 2 cards left in the history book: Universal Knight's Secret Technique and Ordinary Long Sword, and held them tightly in his hand. In the real world, the strength of a card can not only be improved by deepening the compatibility with the card master, but also by using other cards as materials and permanently consuming them to enhance the strength of the card. Chu Ming's other 3 cards, Knight's Suit, Black Snake Long Sword, and Blood Essence Grass, have already become part of Andrew's strength in the form of materials. Of course, if he wants to use the Black Snake Long Sword himself, he only needs to enter the writing state, remove it from Andrew's body and turn it back into a card. There is no need to consider the issue of material consumption like other card masters. The Universal Knight's Secret Technique card in his hand is actually a rare and top-notch material in the card market that can directly enhance the strength of the card. As long as he is willing to sell it, it will definitely be very popular. But if Chu Ming used it himself, the effect would be much worse, and each use would consume a certain amount of mental energy. As for the other ordinary long sword card in his hand, he brought it from the training ground to protect the main body. Anyway, it's my own. If I don't take it, I won't take it, and the other knights don't dare to say anything. With the memory of intermediate swordsmanship specialization in his mind, coupled with the weakened version of life enhancement and long sword, his strength is almost catching up with some weaker trainee knights. It's barely enough for self-protection. The situation outside was currently unknown. Chu Ming did not immediately go out to inquire about the situation, but carefully observed through the peephole. In their dilapidated community, there are at least a dozen official card masters. He must not have been the only one to hear the screams of the murdered woman. He would first let other powerful card masters go over to investigate the situation before making a decision. If you rush out to save others, you may harm yourself. After the woman's voice disappeared, the whole building became eerily silent. Chu Ming knew that this was just the calm before the storm. The history of time forced him to exit the writing state, so there must be some kind of interference factor nearby. While he was still thinking, he heard a bang, a slight shock, and fire shot out from the elevator door in the corridor. Then the steel cable in the elevator shaft broke and the entire elevator fell directly. Jurjurji. The heartbreaking sound of metal friction came from the elevator shaft. Squinting his eyes, Chu Ming held the hilt of the sword and assumed a defensive posture. In an instant, a familiar feeling came over him, and he seemed to feel that he had returned to another world again. The delicate skin on his palms turned into layers of calluses, and the calm confidence when facing dark creatures came to him again. However, Chu Ming knew that this was just an illusion. He was still a weakling and did not get carried away by it. After waiting for a few seconds, outside the peephole, a person flew out of the elevator and hit the wall directly. After experiencing a strong impact, the old tiles on it peeled off layer by layer like paper. The next second, a dark monster with a human face on its belly emerged from the elevator shaft with 8 legs as thin as spears. When Chu Ming saw the monster's appearance clearly, he couldn't help but hold his breath. Dark creature, how can it be? His heart was shaken, and thousands of possibilities flew through his mind. You must know that in order to resist dark creatures and keep dark creatures out of the city, humans have built huge protective walls hundreds of meters high in every city. Now that dark creatures can enter the community, doesn't it mean that the high wall of Liming City has been broken? Impossible. After thinking about it carefully, Chu Ming immediately rejected the idea. Let's not talk about what kind of commotion the dark creatures will cause when they break through the high wall. If Dawn City fell, the Card Master Alliance would definitely report it, and it was impossible for him not to receive any news. He shook his head, quelling his chaotic thoughts. Ignore the origin of the dark creatures, the important thing now is how to destroy the human-faced spider in front of you. The human-faced spider is a powerful dark creature that existed at the end of the Dark Age. Its strength is equivalent to a green quality card. Sure enough, caution is a good thing. Even Andrew and I combined are not enough to fight this spider. If we had acted rashly just now, we might have become this spider's dinner. The card character just now was at a disadvantage. He still has the strength to fight, and other card masters should be here too. You can't take action yet. If you get targeted by it, you'll be in trouble. Besides, his house is right next to him. If the fire of war is drawn here, the hut will definitely be in danger. Chu Ming controlled his breathing and continued to observe the situation in the room, preparing to take action. On the corridor, the sharp spider legs attacked again. The unknown knight wearing heavy armor grabbed it with quick hands and eyes and refused to let go. Suddenly the human-faced spider seemed to sense danger and became extremely manic, trying hard to break free from the knight's shackles. At this time, a fireball flew in from the window and hit the spider's abdomen accurately. Bang! The flames illuminated the human-faced spider's body. It howled in pain, and the human face pattern on its abdomen twisted into a ball. This is the fireball skill card. It was obvious that other card masters were coming soon. After receiving support, the heavily armored knight pursued the victory, grabbed the spider's legs again, and violently attacked with his elbow. The human-faced spider screamed a few words, cut off its legs, stumbled out of the window, and landed on the grass below the residential building. It's a good thing it didn't escape. This escape was directly exposed to everyone's sight. In addition to the pursuing heavy armor knight, 3 more weak card characters rushed towards the human-faced spider. Andrew, go down and help. Remember, if you can fight in a group, don't fight alone. The human machine Andrew nodded, turned around and wanted to break out of the window. Wait, Chu Ming held his head with a headache, ran to him and opened the window, please. The human machine Andrew nodded, grabbed the black snake sword and jumped down from the 7th floor. He used the balcony railing to relieve his strength and landed smoothly on the grass. Several card masters looked at each other on the balcony, understanding each other, and waved various cards towards the human-faced spider. The battle was about to break out. Seeing that it was surrounded, the human-faced spider roared wildly, and thick blood emitted from its body, and then quickly stabbed the heavy-armored knight closest to it with its sharp spider legs. The knight's eyes suddenly shrank and he couldn't react at all. He could only watch as the spider legs turned into afterimages and stabbed his heart. Kaida. On the balcony, a gentleman wearing glasses looked solemn. He stretched out his right hand and wanted to take the card back, but he was always a step too slow. Clang. There was a sound of metal collision, and the black spider's legs got stuck on the armor, unable to advance any further. Looking down, I saw 2 long swords resting on top. The knight of armor looked forward and saw an old swordsman and a young knight standing in front of him. This young knight is Andrew, who just arrived. With the help of an old swordsman to parry, Andrew raised his strong arms, swung his long sword along the spider's legs, drew sparks, and slashed towards the body of the human-faced spider. There was a sound of tearing flesh and blood, and a gash was opened in the abdomen of the human-faced spider. The human-faced spider twisted wildly, and after taking some damage, pushed the 3 of them away. Andrew swiped the black blood off the sword. On its sword grid, red light flashed in the eyes of the two jet black snakes, which obviously triggered the bleeding effect black snakes killing. One sword, two swords. Under the cover of the card master, several card characters performed crazy output for several minutes. In the end, the human-faced spider fell to the ground and died from blood loss because of the wound that could not be healed. Finally dead. Chu Ming exhaled. This human-faced spider is obviously much stronger than the bloodthirsty wild boar we encountered in the other world last time. It has thick blood and high attack power, a perfect boss-level dark creature. I didn't expect that it would end up being beaten up in the end. If it were a spirit in heaven, it would have to complain about despicable humans. On the grass, several knights looked at the body of the human-faced spider silently, wiping their weapons and looking at each other. The heavy armored knight named Kaida made a buzzing sound. Senior, and this brother, thank you. Easy to do. The old swordsman chuckled, then turned and walked into the darkness. Kaida looked at Andrew on the other side. Andrew nodded and then prepared to leave. Brother, wait. Kaida chased after him with heavy steps. My card master told you to give this to you. After saying that, he thrust a dark card into Andrew's hand. The human machine Andrew glanced at the card in his hand, scratched his head in confusion, and then turned into a beam of light and flew into the residential building. Chu Ming stood by the window, holding the light ball. After the light dissipated, the two cards inside were revealed. One card as Andrew, and the other card as a dark card given by Cade. Pitch black spider legs. Another black card. But Chu Ming was not disappointed. This thing doesn't suit me anyway, so it would be nice to sell it. Although black cards cannot be used directly, they can be used as materials. At least on the black market, those card masters who build resonance rituals privately should use black card materials. Putting away the black card, Chu Ming's face gradually became serious. Where did this dark creature come from? Lingming Daily. On August 12, multiple attacks by dark creatures broke out in Liming City. The Dark Research Institute stated that the attacks occurred suddenly at this time. The specific reasons are still under investigation. Last night, there were thousands of attacks by dark creatures throughout the city. This was also the first large-scale attack by dark creatures in Liming City in the past 20 years. As soon as the news came out, it immediately aroused heated discussions among many citizens. Chu Ming, who was in the center of the whirlpool, glanced at the heatedly debated comments on the news, turned off his phone, lay on the sofa and breathed a sigh of relief. Even the Dark Research Institute can't figure out the reason for the sudden appearance of dark creatures. The Dark Research Institute is an organization under the Card Master Alliance. Almost all events related to dark creatures are related to it. It can be said to be the institution in Blue Star that understands dark creatures best. But even they can't find the reason for the large-scale appearance of dark creatures in the city. It seems that this matter may not be as simple as it seems. Forget it. What do I have to worry about? If the sky falls, there will be a big man holding it up. I'm just a little high school student. After thinking about all this, Chu Ming summoned the history book and wanted to enter the writing state. At this time, the phone vibrated and a call came in. Old Wu Qingfeng, the head teacher of Chu Ming's high school, is a responsible teacher and a friend of Chu Ming's parents. Chu Ming looked at the note and answered the phone in confusion. Hey, Lao Wu, what's the matter with? Wu Qingfeng breathed a sigh of relief when he saw that the call was connected, and said angrily, You kid, such a big thing happened yesterday. Didn't the class team say they should report the situation? I almost thought something happened to you. Chu Ming was stunned for a moment, and suddenly remembered that he had indeed seen the news before. However, the heavy armored knight and the human-faced spider fought on the corridor in front of his house yesterday. Early this morning, before he responded to the message, officials knocked on the door to inquire about the situation. After closing the door, he naturally forgot about it. Old Wu, I'm sorry, there was something going on downstairs yesterday, so it took a little time. Is there a situation? Wu Qingfeng's heart tightened and he quickly asked, Are you not hurt? It's okay, I'm hiding in the house. Wu Qingfeng said earnestly, Don't try to be brave. Ordinary people are no better than card masters. In this dangerous era, if you want to survive well, you must lose face. Chu Ming felt warm in his heart. He understood Lao Wu's good intentions. He was afraid that he would show off his strength and lose face. Old Wu, it's really okay. Chu Ming was a little dumbfounded, and guess what, my black card has changed. What? Wu Qingfeng's surprised voice sounded, does this mean you have become a card master? Why don't you go to the Alliance building to get certified as a card master? Chu Ming smiled and said, well, I don't have time. I'll go there in a few days. In fact, he deliberately delayed getting certified as a card master. Certified card masters need to provide card information, and Andrew's history has not yet been rewritten. If he uploads the information of formal Knight Andrew now, and Andrew's information changes again in a few days, it will be difficult for him to explain clearly why Andrew's quality has improved multiple times in a short period of time. Boy, you can't be slow in this matter. Wu Qingfeng urged. The earlier you are certified as a card artist, the earlier you can join the school's Card Artist Star program and receive your monthly share of card materials. You must seize the opportunity. I understand, Lao Wu, don't worry. The Card Master Star program is actually a Rising Card Master incentive plan jointly drafted by 7 middle schools in Liming City. It aims to cultivate and encourage new card masters and select talented card masters for key training. For Chu Ming, the Card Master Star plan is really not that important. After all, he cannot use the card materials, and his growth method is different from other card masters. Exposing the history books for a little card material is not worth the loss. Wu Qingfeng's voice continued to ring from the other end of the phone. Also, since you have become a card master, it is no longer suitable to stay in the ordinary class. I will apply to transfer you to the card master class. Remember to apply for certification early. Listening to Wu Qingfeng nagging on the other end of the phone for several minutes without stopping, Chu Ming quickly found a reason to hang up the phone. Finally clean. Chu Ming stood up and stretched. It's time to solve the problem of the other world. Regarding the formation of the Crazy Knight, Baron Harold must know something inside. He planned to explore the man's outlet. Summoning the history book of the years again, the book automatically moved without wind, shimmering with golden light, and came to the corresponding position. The screen twisted and Chu Ming returned to the training ground. At this time, the sun was setting in the west, and the orange-red rays of light dyed his bright black armor. Master Andrew, Master. Knight Gehai gently patted Chu Ming's shoulder armor. Chu Ming came back to his senses and said, Knight Gehai, what's the matter? I see that you have been standing here for several hours, young master. I am afraid that something might happen to you. Dark creatures often appear around here recently. Several farmers have been snatched away by dark creatures in the past few days. Master, please be careful. It's okay, thank you for your concern. After saying goodbye to Knight Gehai, Chu Ming rode on the black horse and returned to Baron Castle. Baron Harold leaves early and comes home late, and he must not be back by this time. Chu Ming stood in the hall, practicing and waiting quietly. Time passes bit by bit, and night comes. The servants lit the oil lamps and candles, bringing some warm light to the dark castle. After a while, Baron Harold emerged from the darkness wearing a cloak. The orange candlelight shone on him, softening the corners of his eyes. Andrew, what's wrong? Baron Harold smiled, obviously in a good mood. Father, can you answer a question for me? Chu Ming got straight to the point and got straight to the topic. What is the problem? Do you know the Mad Knight? Crazy Knight. Is this the title of some great knight? Baron Harold had a look of confusion on his face. Chu Ming observed the expression on his face and tentatively said, this is a dark creature transformed from humans. After just thinking for a few seconds, the smile on Baron Harold's face gradually disappeared, and his expression became increasingly ugly. How did you know that? Seeing Baron Harold behave like this, Chu Ming was sure that he must know something. He said nonsensically, I read it from an ancient book. Baron Harold obviously would not believe this nonsense. He looked ferocious and said sternly, I don't care where you know it from. From today on, forget all this. Chu Ming was stunned. He didn't expect Baron Harold's reaction to be so violent. He lowered his head and remained silent. Obviously, it was impossible for Baron Harold to take the initiative to tell him the origin of the Crazy Knight. The most important thing is that he can't beat the man in front of him. What else can be done? I'm afraid I have to make more plans. Seeing Andrew lower his head and admit his mistake, Baron Harold's heaving chest began to regain his composure, and his eyes were full of apology. "Sorry, Andrew." The man was silent for a while, then took out a delicate letter from his waist. "This is the admission notice from Niho College in the royal capital." With that said, Baron Harold handed the letter to Chu Ming. "With your talent as a knight, you can definitely move to a bigger stage, and you don't have to live in Black Snake Town. I have acquaintances at the academy. Someone will help you when you get to the capital. Don't worry." Chu Ming was speechless. Going to the Knight Academy to study was one of the routes he had planned before. He simply could not refuse this gift from Baron Harold. Without hesitation for long, Chu Ming took the letter, carefully opened the paint, and took out the admission notice inside. "Enrollment in Midsummer." Baron Harold nodded. "Yes, only when midsummer arrives will the dark creatures temporarily subside. This is the right time to enroll in school. But before that, I have one more thing to give you." After that, Baron Harold walked ahead and led him into the study. "Do you remember the story I told you before? Our ancestor Roman, the great knight known as the Black Snake." When Chu Ming heard this, his long-standing memories came flooding back. Roman, the Black Snake Knight, is the great-grandson of the Blood Wolf Knight, one of the 3 pioneer knights of the Rodan Kingdom. It only took less than 10 years to go from being unfavorable to counter-attacking many geniuses and becoming a great knight. Later, because he was tired of the internal fighting within the family, he set up his own business and developed Black Snake Town from the mountains and forests. It's a pity that God is jealous of talents. After this kingdom's rising star became the Grand Knight, he only shined for 5 years before fading away and being buried in Black Snake Town. The death of Roman's ancestor was very sudden. He did not leave any secrets to the family, only a black snake sword. I also stumbled upon this while looking through books. Baron Harold carefully picked up the ordinary box placed on the table, then opened it, revealing the jade fangs inside. At Harold's signal, Chu Ming carefully touched the fangs with his fingertips. Suddenly, a tingling feeling spread from his fingertips to his entire body. For a moment, he felt as if his body was connected to the fang. "What's this?" Chu Ming's face was full of confusion and surprise, and he couldn't help but glance at the history book. Black Snake Fangs. Quality: dark green. Skill: Black Snake Bloodline. Baron Harold held the box in his hand with a look of reverence on his face. "This is the origin of the Black Snake Great Knight. This black snake fang from ancient times can give humans the powerful black snake blood. It can help the black snake family regain the power hidden in the deepest part of their bloodline." The man looked at Chu Ming with burning eyes, and then handed the box to him, as if expecting him to take over this inheritance. The inexplicable blood affinity and the instinctive resistance to alien blood were contradictorily intertwined. Chu Ming couldn't make up his mind for a while and hesitated. But when he remembered that this body belonged to Andrew and that he was still writing history, he took the box with relief. Anyway, it's Andrew who accepts the inheritance. If something really goes wrong, just open a new archive. Under the guidance of Baron Harold, Chu Ming used a knife to cut the skin and let the blood stain the fangs. The jade fangs that absorbed the blood lit up fluorescently as if a switch had been triggered. Then, under Chu Ming's gaze, fluorescence flowed upstream in the blood and penetrated into his body. A strange feeling arose, and he was surprised to find that his spirit had broken away from the limitations of his body, and his perception expanded by 1 meter in all directions. Within 1 meter, he could clearly see even the fuzz on a mosquito. At this time, new changes also appeared in the Andrew cards in the history books. Black Snake Knight Andrew. Quality: green. Race: human race. Skills: Black Snake Sense, Life Strengthening Intermediate, Sword Mastery Intermediate. Is this the ability of Black Snake? Chu Ming asked in wonder. Baron Harold said, "It's far more than that. When you fully adapt to the Black Snake bloodline, both your perception and strength will be stronger than before. But there is one thing you must pay close attention to." Baron Harold's tone suddenly became serious. "After fusing the Black Snake bloodline, your bloodline will become more mottled and more sensitive to dark creatures, which will allow you to discover some hidden dangers. If one day you meet someone who can touch the blood of the Black Snake." Before Baron Harold could finish speaking, his face suddenly turned pale, veins popped up on his forehead, and black lines instantly crawled all over his body like snakes. The man gasped, his arm muscles bulged, and he punched the desk in front of him to pieces. "Remember, run as far as you can." He used all his strength to say the last sentence, and the man collapsed to the ground from exhaustion. Seeing the black lines gradually disappearing on the man's skin, Chu-Ming was shocked but remained silent. After helping the man back to the room to rest, he directly exited the writing state. In the bedroom, Chu-Ming turned on the computer and searched on it. Pictures jumped out of the screen one after another. These were all pictures of the Crazy Knight. When Chu-Ming saw the black lines hidden under the armor of the Crazy Knight in each picture, he suddenly realized. No wonder Harold kept secret about the Crazy Knight. It turns out that he has been in deep trouble for a long time. It seems that all Harold's strange behavior before can be explained. Harold didn't want Andrew to become a knight, perhaps because he didn't want his son to make the same mistake. When he found that he couldn't stop him, he tried his best to train Andrew and even planned to send him to the Knight Academy. This was to keep Andrew away from this troubled water. Chu-Ming even suspected that Harold's main purpose of passing on the Black Snake bloodline to Andrew was not to pass on power, but to give him the ability to sense hidden dangers. After all, according to him, mottled blood will be more sensitive when facing dark creatures. In this way, those crazy knights hidden in the human group, and even the real culprits who caused the crazy knights to appear, will have no way to hide from him. As for why he didn't react to Harold, it was probably because the black snake blood in his body blocked his perception. As the mysteries were solved one by one, new doubts came to mind. How did the crazy knight transform and appear? And who is the real culprit behind all this, or what kind of monster is it? From beginning to end, all Harold's actions tell two facts. He doesn't want Andrew to become a knight, which means that the knight will inevitably have easier access to the real murderer than others, or that the knight himself is a pawn chosen by the real murderer. He wants Andrew to leave Black Snake Town, which means there is an unknown danger in Black Snake Town. It is most likely that the real murderer is hiding in the town. After understanding this, what he needs to do next is very simple. First, find out the other crazy knights hidden in Black Snake Town. Then secretly investigate Black Snake Town to find out the real culprit. However, even Harold himself has been transformed into a crazy knight, so the number of crazy knights in the town is likely to exceed his expectations. Maybe most of the knights who spent time with him have been transformed. Why do I feel like I wake up and see werewolves all around me? Chapter 11. Early the next morning, Chu-Ming arrived at the stables early, where he saw Baron Harold who had been waiting for him for a long time. You came. The man patted Chu-Ming on the shoulder and got on his horse. No matter what happens these days, don't be surprised and don't interfere. After 1 month, immediately set off for the royal capital. You don't belong here. Chu-Ming nodded silently. On the surface, he obeyed, but in his heart, he had other thoughts. Obviously, judging from the huge number of crazy knights wandering in the real ruins and wilderness, the crazy knights may have been spread throughout the entire rodent kingdom, and not just in Black Snake Town. In other words, even if he goes to the capital, the probability of encountering a crazy knight is not small. If he doesn't figure it all out before setting off, everything will have to start again after going to the royal capital, and it will become more difficult to find the truth. I hope I can gain something from other knights. Chu-Ming rode on the black horse and followed Baron Harold to the forest border. On the road, horses galloped past, causing green waves. After summer arrives, the black and green wheat in the wheat fields on both sides of the road has sprouted its ears. The forest in the distance gradually became lively. With sufficient blood food, the frequency of dark creatures invading the town gradually decreased. And the wheat is growing well due to the decrease in the number of dark creatures stepping on the fields. Seeing that this year is a good harvest year, the Black Snake Knights dare not relax and still insist on going into the forest every day to clean up dark creatures. Chu-Ming also planned to take advantage of the cleaning time to observe the cavaliers. 10 minutes later, Chu-Ming and Baron Harold arrived at the assembly point. Several knights have been waiting at the scene for a long time. Good morning, Lord Baron, Master Andrew. John, the hunter knight who had previously told Chu-Ming about the magic herb, greeted the two of them with a smile. Mr. John, are you the first to arrive again? Chu-Ming tied the black horse to the tree stump and walked towards John with a smile. John, the hunter knight, said cheerfully, it's good to arrive early. I can stretch my old bones more and try to kill a few more dark creatures today. Looking at the old man's kind face, Chu Ming's tense nerves relaxed a little. But when he got close to John, he suddenly felt a trigger, his mind trembled, and his body couldn't help but tense up. A deadly breath hit his face like needles, and the hair on his body stood up. This made Chu Ming take a few steps back. Master, are you okay? Sensing something strange about Chu Ming, John asked with concern. It's okay, I'll go say hello to the other knights. Chu Ming calmed down his expression, shook his head, stayed away from John, and walked toward the other knights present. Not far away, Harold sat cross-legged on the ground and watched Chu Ming's actions quietly without stopping him. A few minutes later, Chu Ming returned to the original place. A trace of solemnity flashed in his eyes, but he quickly hid it. As expected, all the knights present had been transformed into dark creatures. Has even old John, who hates dark creatures the most, fallen into darkness? Chu Ming thought about it carefully and immediately shook his head. Perhaps John and these knights are different from Baron Harold. They don't know that they have been transformed. Otherwise, based on old John's usual performance, I should really give him a Best Actor award. It's useless to think too much, just test it and you will know. Chu Ming restrained his instinct of perception and came to the hunter knight John again. Next to John, Knight Gehai, who had just arrived, was telling everyone about his experience in training new knights, laughing at the stupid performance of those new knights. Master Andrew, good morning. After seeing Chu Ming coming over, Gehai's eyes lit up and he shook hands with Chu Ming enthusiastically. Chu Ming kept a smile on his face and complained in his heart, I didn't expect you, a thick-browed person with big eyes, to be a mole. Master, do you want to eat it? This is a cake made by my wife herself. It is delicious. Gehai smiled and opened the linen cloth in his hand and handed over the baked thick bread. Thank you, I won't eat it. Chu Ming declined his kindness, and after saying hello to the knights sitting around, he sat next to old John. Mr. John, you said before that you were a hunter, right? Yes, young master, do you need my help with anything? John asked doubtfully. Sorry, I'm here to expose your scars. Chu Ming muttered something silently in his heart, then faced old Chowan and secretly observed the expression on his face. I heard that the hunting team was disbanded because of dark creatures, and your friend also. Quote. Facing Chu Ming's question, John was silent for a while, and then said in a low voice. That's right, back then we ventured into the forest to hunt in winter in order to hunt snow deer. As a result, the hunting team was attacked by dark creatures. They escaped and died. If they had not received timely treatment, maybe I would have been in the forest like them and never come out. As he spoke, John took off his breastplate, exposing his wrinkled skin. On his body, there was a huge scratch that was half a meter long from his chest to his stomach. This is the wound the beast left on me. If I had the skills of a knight at that time, maybe I could solve it and they wouldn't have to die. The old man blamed himself. Chu Ming's eyelids drooped and he apologized. I'm sorry for bringing up your sadness. It's not your fault. Seeing that John didn't look fake, he confirmed the fact that these knights didn't know that they had become dark creatures. After coming to this conclusion, Chu Ming felt no joy at finding out the answer, only a little sadness. Old John, Gehai and other knights were trapped by dark creatures all their lives. After becoming knights, they fought against dark creatures all their lives. Unexpectedly, in the end, they turned into what they hated most. How would they react if they knew the truth? Chu Ming sighed. Sometimes ignorance is also a kind of happiness. If you think too much, troubles will follow. Instead of telling everyone the truth, he chose to hide it. 10 minutes later, looking at the Black Snake Knights who had all arrived and started to assemble, Chu Ming used Black Snake Sense to walk around the team. After returning to the middle of the team, his heart felt heavy. The entire knight team has been transformed into dark creatures, and even the new knights have not escaped the fate of being transformed. No wonder Baron Harold wanted to send him to school in the royal capital. Given this situation, he might not even know if he was transformed one day. There's only 1 month left. Chu Ming clenched his fists. I want to see who is doing this. Thinking, he followed the knights into the forest. Time flies, and a week has passed in the other world. In the past few days, Chu Ming went out early and came back late. In the morning, he went into the forest with the cavaliers to clean up dark creatures, and in the afternoon, he returned to Black Snake Town to investigate secretly. Unfortunately, except for the knight who was transformed into a dark creature, he did not find anyone or anything unusual in the town. A whole week and nothing. Logically speaking, I have searched through the entire Black Snake Town, and I haven't even spared a mouse. How come there are no results? Is he hiding in some farmhouse or hunting lodge? On the training ground, Chu Ming waved his long sword over and over again, slashing melancholy onto the wooden stakes. All along, there was always a shadow of crisis lingering in his heart, making him unable to let go. After a while, he suddenly noticed that the knights training around him had hurried expressions and were walking out. What happened? Chu Ming asked one of the knights. The knight looked nervous and said, I heard that the knights were attacked by dark creatures and some knights were injured. Even Lord Baron. Chu Ming was stunned, immediately mounted his black horse and rushed towards the forest border. The horses galloped past, leaving a cloud of dust in their wake. Chu Ming was anxious and rushed to the border soon. In the clearing of the forest, the knights looked horrified and gathered around a dozen knights who had fallen to the ground. Just as Chu Ming was about to step forward, he suddenly seemed to see something incredible, and his eyes suddenly shrank. Opposite the crowd, trees collapsed, and a 4-meter-tall dark creature with a black and red body and a devil-like face stood quietly. An invisible terrifying pressure came out of its body, and its tense muscles seemed to have infinite power. Troll, dark troll, a kind of terrifying dark creature that is common in reality, usually appearing together with the crazy knight. They are extremely powerful and have great vitality. It is difficult for traditional thermal weapons to cause effective damage to them, and they also exude a shocking coercion. Even the weakest troll has the same strength as a green quality card, and the stronger ones can even reach blue quality. How did it appear here? Why is there no attack? What are you waiting for? Thousands of thoughts flashed through Chu Ming's mind. Seeing that the troll didn't make any move, he was secretly on guard. He endured the pressure that stung his skin like needles and walked into the crowd. Master Andrew. Several knights quickly got out of the way when they saw Chu Ming. Chu Ming walked into the crowd, and the smell of blood hit his nose, stimulating his tense nerves. He glanced at the scene. Baron Harold was half sitting on the ground not far away, his armor was messy and his face was pale. The man's left arm was empty and covered in blood, and a broken arm lay next to him like a bloody rag. In front of him, a dozen knights fell in a pool of blood, their armor turned into pieces, and they had completely lost their life breath. Knight Gahai, picking up the thick dough cake stained with blood on the ground and looking at the familiar faces in the pool of blood, Chu Ming's heart trembled and his face became extremely ugly. During more than 3 years in Black Snake Town, he and the Black Snake Knights came together, trained together, and cleaned up dark creatures. Baron Harold, Jai, Old John. He regarded every knight as his own, family and friends. Now these living lives had turned into cold corpses. For a while, his heart was filled with chaos and he could not calm down. John, take him away, ahem, this is not the place he should be. Harold ordered, weakly supported his body with his long sword, and walked towards the troll with one arm. Master Andrew, get out of here first. Old Chowan looked sad and pulled Chu Ming back, fearing that he would do something stupid. The troll in front of them was not something they could challenge at all. Even Baron Harold was defeated in the battle and lost his arm. Just when Chu Ming wanted to hold John down, a male voice suddenly came from the troll's body. Andrew, where do you want to go? The troll's flesh and blood shrank, and a human shape condensed out. The black snake sense was triggered, and an extreme sense of threat stung Chu Ming's nerves. The pressure on his body instantly increased several times. Pastor Lyle. This person was the priest who was beside the bed when he first entered the writing state. When he recognized the man who walked out of the troll's body, all his previous doubts and confusion disappeared, and clues were connected in his mind. No wonder he couldn't find the real culprit behind the scenes in Black Snake Town. As a church pastor, Lyle, like the Black Snake Knights, generally does not appear in small towns. Either staying in the small church on the top of the mountain or going out to collect medicine, unless a knight was injured, he would not meet him. Although it is difficult to meet him usually, the person who has the deepest contact with the Cavaliers is the church pastor. Whether it is a new player's entrance inspection or an injured knight, you need to ask the church's pastor to help. Therefore, the transformation of the rookie knight may have started from the day he broke through to the official knight. Yes, I'm glad you still know me. Lyle smiled modestly and walked towards him. Baron Harold's face was gloomy and he stood in front of Chu Ming. Ahem, Lyle, according to the original agreement, I will become your dependent, and you let Andrew go. Pastor Lyle shook his head and grabbed Baron Harold's neck. Black lines instantly covered the man's body, and the man showed a look of pain. Harold, today is different from the past. My strength just exceeds yours. You can't stop me from eroding the Cavaliers, and you can't stop me from eroding Andrew. After saying that, Lyle had a sickly laugh on his face, his arm muscles bulged, and he threw Harold to the ground hard. Puff! Baron Harold spewed blood from his mouth, his ribs were broken and pierced into his lungs. He fell to the ground with too much air in and out. When Chu Ming saw this, he was furious. He clenched the black snake sword with both hands and struck at the priest with all his strength. Lyle did not dodge and snapped his fingers with his right hand. Clang! The sound of swords sounded, and a figure flew out. John. Chu Ming focused his eyes on the ground and saw old Chowan, who was knocked to the ground and covered in black streaks, in great pain. Young master, kill me. Old John, who had long been eroded by darkness, stretched out his hands that gradually transformed into animal claws, shouted at the top of his lungs, and muddy tears flowed from his eyes. The surrounding knights also howled in pain, and their bodies were gradually covered with black lines, showing varying degrees of alienation, and they surrounded Chu Ming. Asshole! The veins on Chu Ming's forehead popped out, and he stared at the pastor, as if fire was about to burst out of his eyes. Although Black Snake Knight Andrew is powerful, it is only of green quality, and it is difficult to compete with the dark green quality troll priest in front of him. Only with the help of history books can we have a chance of victory. Chu Ming tried hard to maintain his last bit of sanity and temporarily stopped writing. His thoughts inspired the history book and he quickly wrote on it. In Dark Age 8414, the Black Snake Knight Andrew had a decisive battle with the troll priest Lyle. He had a sudden inspiration, showed his strength beyond his level, and luckily killed the troll priest. After finishing writing, he stared at the page nervously. The fonts on the book began to twist crazily, but within a second they exploded. The difference in strength is too big, and the difficulty of writing has also skyrocketed. Chu Ming had a gloomy face and did not give up. He continued to write while checking the information, trying again and again. 3 days and 3 nights passed in real time, and after countless failures, he did not give up, and continued to write despite exhaustion. Dark Age 8414, the Black Snake Knight Andrew fought a decisive battle with the troll priest Lyle, inherited the Black Snake bloodline of Baron Harold, burned the blood, and powerfully killed the troll priest. The font shook, but this time it did not disappear. Instead, it emitted a golden light. It's done. Chu Ming was refreshed, holding the history book in his hand, and quickly entered the writing state. Time flowed again, and the knights looked in pain, twisted their bodies, and dragged their swords towards Chu Ming like walking zombies. Kill me! A sound like the howling of wild beasts reached Chu Ming's ears. His fingers trembled, but he held the sword tightly. I will kill him with my own hands for you. As soon as he finished speaking, Black Snake's perception was activated, and all the movements of the knights fell into his perception. Infused with power, the long sword slashed around, all the blades broke, and all the heads fell to the ground. Chu Ming looked past the still bodies of the knights and looked at Lyle calmly. Lyle's mind flashed, and he seemed to see the huge waves hidden under the young man's calm eyes. Chu Ming came to Baron Harold and half knelt on the ground. Lend me your power. He pressed his hand on the man's wound, and a ray of fluorescence actually flowed into his body along with the undried blood. Immediately afterwards, a powerful aura slowly rose from his body. Lyle raised his eyebrows slightly, his body continued to rise, his muscles bulged, and he turned into a dark troll, and his giant fist struck Chu Ming with great force. Jung! The sound of metal colliding was heard, followed closely by an air explosion. The raised dust was shaken away, and the troll flew out, knocking down several maple trees. How can it be? The troll sat slumped in the pit, his eyes filled with disbelief. How could such a terrifying power appear in a human being? Eye for eye. The boiling blood energy rose, and the young man roared angrily, stamping his legs on the ground, and the ground shattered, hitting the troll like a cannonball. The troll's eyes widened and he only had time to take a blocking stance. There was a loud bang, bones broke, and the troll's huge body was smashed directly into the soil. Chu Ming trampled the troll under his feet, used his long sword as a mallet, and smashed it with all his strength. Bang bang bang. Hachi, I vote. The anger came like a violent storm, drowning the troll's voice. Soon, the black snake's long sword could not withstand the violent force, and a few cracks appeared. He directly discarded the long sword, raised his fist and smashed it. Quote. When all the iron finger cuffs were broken and the troll turned into a puddle of flesh, Chu Ming gasped and stopped. Hoo. Chu Ming sat slumped on the soil soaked in black blood, looking towards the open space. The clearing was a mess, blood was flowing everywhere, and the twisted corpses of the knights were crisscrossed. After his blood had burned out, Chu Ming's body was now like an empty, broken urn. As the temperature inside his body continued to evaporate, his vision began to become blurry. I didn't expect death would feel like this. Suddenly his vision went dark and he fell to the ground. After the death of historical carrier Andrew, time in another world continues to flow forward. Dark Age 8476, darkness flooded the world and Intinuit died. In the real room, Chu Ming returned to consciousness and looked at the ending in the history books with complicated eyes. Nothing changed as a result. The inertia of history is too heavy. I just eliminated the trolls in Black Snake Town, but I can't affect the pattern of the entire alien world. Chu Ming held his dizzy head and let out a long sigh of relief. The good thing is I can start over and use the experience of the first week to become stronger. Defeat Lyle and save Black Snake Town. Thinking of this, the tight strings in his heart finally relaxed. Tiredness and sleepiness came over him like a tide, and he fell into a deep sleep. The next evening, Chu Ming finally woke up after sleeping for a whole day. He turned on the light in the dark, washed up and finished eating, then sat on the sofa and read the news. In the past few days, in order to deal with the trolls, he had not cared about reality for a long time. Fortunately, nothing major happened. The biggest news was the invasion of dark creatures that happened 4 days ago. Since reality is okay, then we can solve the problem of the other world. I need detailed research on trolls. Chu Ming thought for a while, opened the official website of the Dark Research Institute, and found the information about the troll in the dark creature illustration. Dark troll. Quality: green, blue. Race: dark creature. Skills: bloodline pressure, devil muscle. Remarks: this creature seems to have considerable intelligence and can control other dark creatures. Extreme wisdom. Chu Ming smiled bitterly, that's what people become. Thinking of this, his heart skipped a beat. Even the Dark Research Institute has not discovered that the trolls have extremely high intelligence. Are these trolls hiding themselves? Maybe the invasion of dark creatures 4 days ago was also their fault. After all, these trolls can completely transform back into their original form and pretend to be normal cards to enter and exit the giant wall. Wouldn't that mean that the giant wall is of no use to them? Chu Ming's heart beat faster and his face became more solemn. He suddenly realized that the huge wall that gave people a sense of security seemed to be riddled with holes. The emergence of trolls began when humans interfered with the history of another world more than 20 years ago. This interference not only advanced the demise of the other world's history by 3,000 years, but also attracted new dark creatures, such as dark trolls and crazy knights. After the emergence of trolls and other dark creatures, Dawn City was rarely peaceful for 20 years, which also made everyone lose vigilance against these newly born dark creatures. Now it seems that this may be what the trolls are planning. The previous invasion of dark creatures was most likely a test. Now that we understand what the troll is going to do, the next thing to do is to find the hidden troll in Dawn City. Chu Ming began to worry about what to do. If you want to discover the trolls disguised as card characters in Dawn City, you will have to get close to them unless you have mottled blood like Andrew. But a new problem emerged. The other world was once ruled by the gods, and the humans who now dominate the other world are just the servants of the gods they created. In order to keep human blood pure, the gods once issued blood shackles to humans to prevent human blood from being contaminated. From the distant age of gods to the end of the Dark Age, the shackles of blood still exist. The reason why Andrew was able to absorb the Black Snake bloodline was simply because the bloodline shackles weakened with the passage of long years. If the blood shackles did not exist, Andrew, who had absorbed the blood of the Black Snake, would have turned into a snake man with black scales on his skin and vertical pupils in his eyes. This is going to be difficult. If you want to have alien blood, you can only do it at the end of the Dark Age. But at this time, the alien beasts had long been reduced to legends. Even Roman, the ancestor of the Black Snake family, got 3 black snake fangs by chance. For this fang, Roman, Harold and Andrew each use 1. There is no leftover at all, let alone used to cultivate other card characters. It seems that it is not realistic to rely on alien blood to cultivate hybrid card characters to search for trolls on a large scale. Perhaps other methods can be used. Can we search for unregistered card characters to find trolls? Chu Ming thought for a while and shook his head. This is unrealistic. First of all, he has no evidence to prove that Dawn City has been invaded. It is almost impossible to make the Card Master Alliance spend a lot of manpower and material resources to search with his own words. Moreover, some card masters walk in the black zone for the convenience of operating secretly, using a large number of unregistered cards resonated through private resonance rituals. If we want to investigate, we will definitely encounter strong opposition from these card masters, and even me, the one who initiated the opinion, will be retaliated against. Chu Ming sighed helplessly. It seems impossible to rely on the power of reality. We can only think of ways from other worlds. If we can find the reason for the emergence of trolls and the principle of transforming knights, maybe the problem of trolls in reality can be solved. After gathering his mood, Chu Ming set his sights on the history books. It's time to start the second week. As the words fell, the font trembled and the pages glowed golden. Chu Ming's spirit flashed and he jumped into the mighty river of history. Time: Dark Age 8412. Location: Rodin Kingdom, Black Snake Town. Vector: Young Andrew. Baron's Castle, in Andrew's room. Returning to the very beginning, Chu Ming woke up from the chaos and struggled to open his tears. The candlelight flickered, and 3 figures appeared in front of him, namely Baron Harold, Reverend Lyle, and the barber. Seeing that Chu Ming was awake, Baron Harold stepped forward and asked nervously, "Andrew, how are you feeling?" Chu Ming shook his head. He could feel an unknown aura fading from his body as the blood flowed. A flash of realization flashed in his eyes. It turns out that this bloodletting therapy really works. Although it is a clumsy method, it can also expel the invading darkness from the body. Experiencing it again, he discovered many details that he had not noticed before. Like now, after he woke up, only Baron Harold and the barber came over, but Pastor Lyle still stood where he was. In the interplay of light and dark, the expression on his face seemed to be a smile but not a smile. Chu Ming cursed in his heart. This thief must have targeted me at this time. He did not alert the enemy, but waited quietly for Lyle to check his body. After confirming that there was no big problem, the 3 people exited the room. When silence returned, Chu Ming summoned the history book of time. Lyle's current strength should only be of green quality, and is far from reaching dark green quality. When I take the time to develop, I'll kill him. Early the next morning, Chu Ming, who was sitting cross-legged on the bed, opened his eyes. He stayed up all night last night, using secret techniques to speed up his body's recovery, and now he has fully recovered his ability to move. There is no need to lie in bed for 3 days before getting off the ground like in the last week. Dong dong. There was a knock on the door, and Baron Harold came in with his servants. Seeing Chu Ming getting up, he was stunned for a moment, and then said with a sullen face, "Nonsense, your body hasn't recovered yet, don't move around." Looking at the living Baron Harold in front of him, Chu Ming secretly sighed. "Father, there is something I want to tell you." As he spoke, he glanced at the servant beside him. Baron Harold frowned slightly and waved the servant away. "Tell me, what's the matter?" Chu Ming did not speak, and stretched his body. A sound of fried beans rang out from his body, and then the blood roared into his heart. Waves of dull vibrations came out of his body. He casually twisted off a corner of the table next to him. Baron Harold was stunned for a moment, and then his expression became more and more gloomy. When did you secretly learn the secret technique? Feeling the strong beating of his heart, Chu Ming chuckled and said, Father, the secret method is too simple. I learned it after just reading it once yesterday. Impossible. Baron Harold looked shocked and subconsciously denied it. Knowing that Baron Harold would not believe it, Chu Ming once again spoke out about his understanding of the secret method. He planned to establish a genius persona in front of Baron Harold, so as to reduce the resistance from men and make the next action smoother. After hearing Chu Ming's insights, Baron Harold fell silent and began to doubt himself. Is Andrew really a genius? Or am I too useless? Taking advantage of Baron Harold's psychological defenses being shaken, Chu Ming struck while the iron was hot and prepared to completely convince the man. Father, you must be very wary of Lyle. How did you? Chu Ming's words were so frightening that the man froze in place. Father, I am a genius. Chu Ming said seriously. As long as you give me some time, I can help you deal with him. Only if you don't hinder me. Andrew. Baron Harold stopped talking and fell into endless thoughts. He couldn't understand how his stupid son suddenly became so smart. Is it really like the protagonist in the night novel, who can achieve enlightenment and become a genius after experiencing life and death? I'm really crazy to think of this. The man held his head, calmed down, and raised his head to face Andrew. You said you can solve Lyle, how sure are you? Chu Ming smiled. 100%. Quote. Baron Harold walked out of the room, feeling dazed. It's so ridiculous that I would believe that. But he has already prepared a retreat for Andrew, and it will be okay even if he fails. Autumn leaves are falling and white snow is drifting. Unconsciously, 4 months have passed. After Chu Mingming showed his extremely rapid progress and amazing swordsmanship level, Baron Harold no longer stopped him from practicing, but instead allowed him to join the Black Snake Knights in advance for training. In the forest, Chu Ming wore knight armor and held a black snake sword in his hand. He teamed up with Old Chowan to kill a dark creature without eyes. Mr. John, please wait for me here. I will come back as soon as I go. After saying that, regardless of Old Chowan's reaction, he took a few steps and jumped directly to the mountain stream. Looking for memories, Chu Ming took a few steps deeper and came to the original location of the blood essence grass. He knelt down and pushed aside the thick snow on top, revealing the blood essence grass that exuded a mysterious light. Chu Ming squinted his eyes and said happily, with this, I am sure to break through to an official knight within half a year. In fact, relying on the experience of the previous week, he practiced the knight's secret method much faster than before. But reaching the level of a formal knight is not an easy task. The practice of the universal knight's secret technique is divided into 2 parts. One part is the study of the secret technique, which improves the efficiency of practice by deepening the understanding of the secret technique. Part of it is physical training, building strength through daily training. His understanding of the secret method is close to the limit, and studying the secret method is of little help to his cultivation. The most important thing is daily physical training. You can't take shortcuts in this part, you can only exercise honestly. With the blood essence grass to replenish his energy and blood, the training time can be greatly extended, allowing him to break through to an official knight faster. Coming up from the mountain stream, Chu Ming said hello to Old Chowan, who was still dealing with the corpses of dark creatures. Mr. John, it's getting dark soon, let's go back early. Okay, Master, let me clean up the grease first. After Old John packed up, the 2 of them returned to the Cavaliers and went down the mountain before it was completely dark. Everyone has worked hard today. Please disband on the spot. Baron Harold shouted to the knights, and then watched them leave. Only he and Chu Ming were left in the open space at the end. Let's go back. Chu Ming nodded, mounted the black horse, and walked slowly with Baron Harold. The 2 of them were speechless along the way, and the atmosphere was silent. After a while, the man suddenly asked, "How is your practice going?" Chu Ming took out the blood essence grass in his arms and said with a relaxed smile, "I happened to pick a magic herb on the mountain today. With this, I will be promoted to an official knight in less than half a year." Really? That's really great. Baron Harold was relieved and his tone became lighter. What happened? Seeing the man's appearance, Chu Ming was a little curious. After winter arrives, dark creatures become more and more manic and often invade farmland and attack farmers. As he spoke, Harold's expression gradually became serious. But the strange thing is that many dark creatures seem to be restraining their bloodthirsty instincts and just kidnap the missing farmers into the forest without directly taking action. Chu Ming's mind moved. You mean, Lyle is manipulating dark creatures to cause trouble? Yes, I suspect that he plans to increase his strength by swallowing blood food. Maybe we have to act quickly. Don't worry, Father, he won't improve that fast. Chu Ming comforted him and recalled the incident of dark creatures kidnapping people that happened in the first game. It seems that at this point in time, Lyle plans to secretly improve his strength while cannibalizing the Cavaliers. Baron Harold had already noticed it, but was unable to stop it. But now that he's had it all over again, there's no way he can let Lyle succeed again. Chu Ming swore secretly and tightened the hilt of the sword in his hand. Time passed and 3 months passed. In the Baron's castle, Chu Ming sat cross-legged on the bed, an invisible air flow blew out, and the curtains fluttered. After a while, he opened his eyes, and his eyes flashed. He has entered the level of a formal knight. It's time to liquidate everything. Chu Ming opened his palm, revealing the jade fangs inside. Dark Age 8413. In early spring, it rains constantly. At the foot of the church hill, 2 visitors in cloaks braved the heavy rain and walked along the path to the church. The visitors were none other than Chu Ming and Harold. Glancing at the dilapidated and blackened church in front of him, Chu Ming withdrew his gaze. Father, wait for me outside. Baron Harold's eyes were calm and he did not refuse. He has long been contaminated by Lyle, and his strength cannot be used at all when facing the priest. If he goes to help, he may even be controlled, which will affect Chu Ming's performance. Chu Ming walked to the door of the church, opened the 2 wooden doors and walked in. In the church, the orange candlelight was bright, and Lyle was sitting on the seat, clasping his hands and closing his eyes in prayer. After shaking his body, Chu Ming took off his hood, revealing his young and resolute face. Sorry, we are not accepting believers today. Lyle stood up slowly and looked back. When he saw that the person coming was Andrew, a trace of amusement appeared on his face. Master Andrew, this is your first time coming to church. Yes. There was a sound of metal collision from the armor, and Chu Ming walked towards Lyle. Father God is kind and loving. Is there anything I can do to help you? The smile on Lyle's face became stronger and stronger, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. Seeing Lyle's impatient look, Chu Ming chuckled, leaned close to his ear and whispered. I want to tell you something that comes from the bottom of my heart. Puff. The long sword penetrated the priest's heart, and a large amount of blood spurted out. The smile on Lyle's face gradually disappeared, and he staggered back a few steps. Facing Chu Ming, who had no martial ethics, Lyle glanced blankly at his heart and murmured. Andrew, is this your etiquette as a noble? You have polluted the holy church. So what do you want to do? Chu Ming drew his sword and approached Lyle. The priest let go of his hands and a sickly smile appeared on his face. In order to atone for your sins to Father God, please let me eat. Before Lyle could finish speaking, he was kicked away by Chu Ming, smashing several rows of prayer seats. The corners of the young man's mouth turned up slightly. Hasn't anyone taught you that the more the boss talks, the faster he will die? Andrew. The flesh and blood on Lyle's body crawled like worms, and his dark fist shot through the air toward Chu Ming. The black shadow gradually enlarged in front of his eyes, and the black snake sense was triggered. Chu Ming bent forward and slashed forward with his sword with both hands. The black snake sword easily pierced the troll's dark skin and cut into the pink flesh. Roar! The troll howled in pain, and the flesh and blood at the wound squirmed to jam the long sword, then raised its left hand and swung it at Chu Ming. Chu Ming ducked sideways as if he had foreseen it, and the troll's fist fell into the air. He grasped the hilt of the sword with both hands and swung the sword forcefully to the side. A dull sound of cutting flesh was heard, and he left a long and narrow wound on the troll's body. The troll screamed, breathing heavily, his eyes red, and reason gradually disappeared from his eyes. Suddenly a strong pressure came from it. Chu Ming snorted, his body suddenly shook, and all the stone bricks under his feet shattered. Ah, I'm going to eat you. The troll waved his fist, and countless fist shadows fell towards Chu Ming with heavy pressure. Chu Ming had a crazy look on his face, inserted his long sword into the stone bricks, and raised his fists to confront the troll head-on. Bang bang bang. Fists collided with fists, and the sound of air explosions echoed throughout the church. The stone bricks under their feet were shattered, and the nearby seats were also affected by the impact, and they continued to fall backwards and scattered pieces of wood on the ground. Refreshing, ha ha ha, Chu Ming laughed, and the iron finger sheaths covering his palms shattered into pieces in the collision. His fists were bloody, and he didn't know whose blood they were stained with. Ah, the troll's eyes were red and full of disbelief. No matter how much he waved his fist, he could never knock down the man in front of him. Even though his fists were bloody, he still showed excitement. Looking at the crazy man in front of him, the troll suddenly felt terrified, and an inexplicable fear surged out of his heart. You monster! The man in front of me is not human at all. This is a monster in human skin. He wants to stay away from this man and leave Black Snake Town. The troll finally couldn't withstand the violent impact and retracted its claws that were deformed, broken, and bloody. After resisting Chu Ming's punches for a few times and spitting out black blood, he desperately ran away, stumbling back. Where do you want to run? Chu Ming shouted loudly, pulled out his long sword, and threw it at the troll with all his strength. Boom! The long sword exploded and penetrated directly through the troll's chest. A powerful impact came, and the troll's body fell forward involuntarily, crashing through the glass window. Let me go. The troll's eyes were frightened, and he used his hands and feet to hold the window, and weakly stretched out his hand. Suddenly, he felt an irresistible force coming from his ankle, and his body couldn't help being dragged back. No. The rain hit the window along with the strong wind, the candles were extinguished, and screams that did not sound like human voices came from the dark church. Until the heavy rain stopped, the sun shone, and the screams in the church stopped. Chu Ming, covered in black blood, opened the wooden door and walked out. Baron Harold, who was standing at the door waiting, looked at Chu Ming covered in blood, and his heart was shaken. He was stunned for a moment, and when he saw Chu Ming falling down without any force, he came to his senses, lifted the young man up and walked down the mountain. 3 days later, inside the Baron's castle, the servant took off the bandage on Chu Ming's hand, revealing a pair of blood-red hands full of scars. This knight's physique is indeed extraordinary. He will be healed so quickly. Chu Ming moved his palms and sighed. Baron Harold, who was sitting next to him, said in a deep voice, your strength far exceeds that of Lyle, and you also have black snake sense. You can kill him with just a quick turn, so there is no need to take such a risk. Listening to the man's blame, Chu Ming chuckled. Not next time. After hearing Chu Ming's admission, Baron Harold's expression softened a little and he took a letter from his waist. Is this an acceptance letter? Chu Ming looked at the paint on the letter and asked. Although he didn't know why Chu Ming knew it, he was already used to the various behaviors of his genius son. Yes, this is the admission notice from Niho College in the royal capital. With your talent, you can definitely go to a bigger stage. The Black Snake Knight is not your end. I hope you can recreate the glory of Roman's ancestors as the great Black Snake Knight. Of course. Baron Harold stared at Chu Ming closely. Now that the danger in Black Snake Town has been removed, it is more appropriate to stay. The situation in the royal capital is more complicated than that in Black Snake Town. One wrong step will lead to an abyss. I'd rather you stay. The tragedy of the previous week flashed through Chu Ming's mind. He took a deep breath and accepted the letter without hesitation. Sorry, father, I would rather go to the royal capital than stay in Black Snake Town. Only with absolute strength can we deal with all dangers. If I stay in Black Snake Town, I can only stay put. Only when I go to the capital can I come into contact with the more powerful night power. Midsummer. On the main road outside Black Snake Town. The enrollment time is approaching, and Chu Ming is ready to go to Niho College in the royal capital to study. Today is the day he leaves Black Snake Town. On this journey, in addition to him, there was also Knight Gehai accompanying him as an attendant knight. Master, you have to pay attention to your safety. Old Chowan reminded him worriedly as he smoked his cigarette. Don't worry, I'm going to study, not the lair of some dark creature. Chu Ming patted Old Chowan on the shoulder, turned over and rode on his beloved black horse. Gehai interrupted with a smile. The young master is right, you old man is always afraid of this, why are there so many bad people? Chu Ming glanced at him and said in his heart, maybe. Baron Harold stood among the knights with a serious expression. Okay, let's set off while it's still early. If we set off now, we can still go to a nearby village to spend the night before dark. Chu Ming nodded. Baron Harold was right to remind them that if they couldn't find a village or town to spend the night at night, the two of them would have to camp in the wild. Although he is not afraid of dark creatures, it would still be quite distressing if he was harassed. Goodbye everyone. Master, goodbye. Chu and Ming rode horses into the distance. When no one could be seen and no sound of horses could be heard, Baron Harold silently withdrew his gaze and turned back. That night, due to the carelessness of an unreliable squire knight, the two of them deviated from their planned route and did not arrive at the village in time, so they were forced to spend the night in the wild. Around the campfire. Master, I really deserve to die. Zhe beat his chest and cried, his eyes filled with regret. Okay, it's just the two of us here, don't get too involved and disturb me. Chu Ming leaned under the tree, flipping through the history books, and replied without raising his head. Quote. Zhe scratched his head in embarrassment and said, isn't it too quiet? I'm a little scared. It will be exciting enough when you recruit dark creatures later. As soon as Chu Ming said this, Zhe immediately shut up. Shaking his head helplessly, Chu Ming returned his gaze to the book. Servant Knight Zhe. Quality: dark gray. Race: human race. Skills: life strengthening intermediate, sword mastery elementary. Although Zhe is stupid and likes to make trouble, he is surprisingly useful. This was the first time that he discovered that he could obtain character cards in the history book. It seems that as long as you establish an affiliation with a historical figure, you can obtain the corresponding card. Doesn't that mean that as long as I become the leader of a certain knight order, I can get the knight card of the entire knight order? Chu Ming's eyes flashed slightly, and many thoughts flashed through his mind. At least I can now use Zhe cards to certify the card master without any further delay. No, let's wait a little longer and cultivate this kid's strength to a higher level. While Chu Ming was thinking, his eyes unknowingly focused on Zhe who was making pancakes. Zhe felt a little uncomfortable being stared at and said in fear, Master, is there something behind me? Fine. Chu Ming shook his head and chuckled. It was just an ordinary smile, but Zhe felt a chill on his back, as if he had been invaded by darkness. The following days also confirmed his ominous premonition. Every morning, before the beasts came out to look for food, Chu Ming would pull him up to practice swordsmanship. After the practice, the two started on their way again. Chu Ming is lucky, he can hang up. But Zhe is suffering because he wakes up earlier than chickens and goes to bed later than pigs every day. Every day while practicing swordsmanship, I shed tears and cried bitterly. If his physical fitness wasn't different from ordinary people, he would have collapsed from exhaustion long ago. Chu Ming also adhered to the principle of creating immortality and working hard, and continued to train him. Ever since, within 1 month of going to the royal capital, Zhe's training results in 1 month were equivalent to the training results in the previous year. Although it is difficult to improve the knight's secret skills, his swordsmanship has improved by leaps and bounds, and he is not far away from being proficient in intermediate swordsmanship. Porto Tello. This is the closest port to the royal capital in the Luodan kingdom, and it is also one of the destinations of Chu Ming's trip. After paying the entry fee, the two entered the city smoothly. He came to Porto Tello for 2 purposes. One is to get familiar with the foreign towns before entering the royal capital. Previously, in order to avoid encountering trolls and crazy knights, he usually only stayed in villages and small towns overnight and never entered large towns. However, Porto Tello did not disappoint him. As soon as he entered, Black Snake Sense detected several bad auras. The density of dark creatures here was far more terrifying than he imagined. And his other purpose is to defect to the acquaintance mentioned by Baron Harold, the businessman Grote. This small businessman from Port Tello was befriended by Baron Harold during his youthful travels to Port Tello. Although he was not a close friend, Baron Harold had a title and the illustrious reputation of his Roman ancestors. The merchant Grote wanted to fawn over Harold every day. Walking on the street, people were coming and going, and Zhe looked very excited. This was his first time entering a big city, and for a moment, he forgot about the painful training on the road. Come on, let's go visit Mr. Grote first. Stop training for the next few days. What? Great. Jai was overjoyed, with tears in his eyes, and held Chu Ming's hand and refused to let go. Quote. Feeling the strange looks from passers-by on the street, Chu Ming calmly shook his hand away and walked towards the wealthy residential area following the guidance of passers-by. The two walked for half an hour, crossed a bridge filled with the smell of fish, and arrived at a wealthy residential area. No, 20 Meiji Street, Chu Ming muttered in his mouth and looked at the house number. When he reached the end of the road, a luxurious manor with no end in sight appeared in front of him. Is this the small businessman Baron Harold calls? He couldn't understand it, but he was greatly shocked. Just when he was about to knock on the door, Jai, the loser on the side, stepped forward. Master, I'm coming. Dong dong dong. There was a crisp metal sound from the iron door, and after a while, a maid with cringy eyes and wearing a black and white dress came out. The maid first glanced at the two of them secretly, then lowered her head and asked respectfully, Gentlemen, what can I do for you? I'm here to see Mr. Grote. After speaking, Chu Ming handed a letter to the maid. Please wait. The maid didn't dare to neglect and ran back in a hurry. After waiting for a while, the maid returned the same way and invited Chu Ming and the two inside. After placing the horses, the two followed the maid into the big house in the middle. It's so rich. Looking at the splendid interior of the house, the smell of money hit him, and Jai couldn't help but exclaimed. Even Chu Ming couldn't help but sigh in his heart. Sir, these are the two gentlemen. The maid stopped and slowly retreated. Chu Ming looked forward and saw an old man slowly standing up from his chair in the hall with the support of a young woman. Grote smiled kindly and said, Are you Harold's son? Chu Ming heard this and responded with a smile. Old man, you must be Mr. Grote. Child, come closer and let me take a look at it. Chu Ming nodded. Just as he was about to step forward, the hairs on his body suddenly stood up, and a fatal sense of threat came from the front. He couldn't help but stop. Young man, what's wrong? Grote still had a kind look on his face. It's okay, I just felt a little tired suddenly. Chu Ming held his head, with a hint of apology in his tone. Is that so? The old man smiled kindly and said to the woman behind him, Arrange rooms for the two guests and let them have a good rest. Chu Ming shook his head and refused. No need, we have already booked a room at a hotel outside, so you don't need to worry about it. Jai on the side looked at Chu Ming with some doubts and muttered in his heart. Really, why didn't I know? Upon hearing this, Grote stepped forward excitedly and patted Chu Ming on the shoulder. Ahem, Andrew, your father entrusted you to my care, how could I let you live in those dirty hotels? Just listen to me, I have already ordered the chef to prepare a sumptuous dinner for you. Chu Ming looked at Grote's appearance as an elder who cared about the younger generation and stopped insisting. Then just listen to Mr. Grote and I'll spare your trouble tonight. Why bother? Grote chuckled and let the maid from before lead them to the room. The three of them walked along the corridor. Along the way, the entire house was deserted. Apart from the three of them, it was difficult to see anyone. Halfway through, Chu Ming stared at the maid in front of him and suddenly asked, Miss Maid, what is your name? The maid paused, turned around and bowed her head. Dear Mr. Andrew, my name is Nina. How long have you been working here? The maid Nina was stunned and replied truthfully, It's been half a year. Did you come here alone? No, she shook her head gently, I still have a younger sister. But she was not very obedient and was locked up by the master. Yeah, Chu Ming touched his chin and did not continue the conversation. Jai glanced at Chu Ming and then at the maid in front. Seeing that neither of them spoke, he did not dare to speak. It was extremely quiet along the way until they reached their destination. The maid Nina opened the door and spoke to break the awkward atmosphere. Two gentlemen, please come in. Trouble. Chu Ming took the maid's key and entered one of the rooms. The room is luxuriously decorated, with a big bed in front of you. The environment is indeed much better than that of a hotel. Chu Ming packed up his things with the help of the maid and officially moved in. Mr. Andrew, if you need anything, you can call Nina at any time, but I have to leave for now. After the maid finished speaking, a trace of hesitation flashed across her face, as if she wanted to say something, but she never said it. Chu Ming nodded, looked at the maid's leaving figure, and suddenly asked, Is there something you want to tell me? The maid paused and stood there for a few seconds. No, sir. After saying that, the maid hurriedly left. Zhehai poked his head out of the room and said with a smile, "Master, have you fallen in love with my little maid?" Chu Ming patted his head and said angrily, "Don't sleep too much tonight." "Huh, oh, okay." Although Zhehai was not very clever, he could hear the defensiveness in the young man's tone. As night fell, after eating and drinking, the two returned to their respective rooms to prepare for rest. After Chu Ming took a bath, he put on his armor and prepared to explore this troll manor at night. Yes, the growth he saw during the day had already fallen into darkness and became a dark troll. He and Grote were just maintaining a superficial courtesy. Once the old man knew that his identity was exposed, he would definitely not let him go. Or it should be said that the old man might not have wanted to let him go from the beginning. Assembling the black snake sword, Chu Ming was about to go out when there was a sudden knock on the door. Chu Ming was stunned, opened the door, looked around, and saw only a corner of the white dress disappearing at the corner of the corridor. When he looked away, he found a note on the ground that read, "The devil is not here, run away." Chu Ming looked calm and knocked on Zhehai's door. After a while, Zhehai, wearing knight armor and a guarded look, walked out. The way he looked, it seemed that he had taken what Chu Mingtian said to heart. "Come on, follow me." The man didn't ask, he just followed Chu Ming closely, always on guard. Chu Ming maximized his sensory perception and groped forward in the direction where the footsteps disappeared. After a while, the two walked out of the mansion and came outside. But they searched outside for a while, but there was no sign of the girl. Just when he was about to give up, a noise suddenly came from a distance. He heard men cursing and women crying and screaming. "This way." Chu Ming frowned, walked through the garden, and came to a cellar. Vaguely, he seemed to smell a smell of blood. He stepped closer to the wooden door and heard Grote's curses coming from inside. "Why did you betray me?" "Ah!" A scream came out, and Chu Ming clearly heard it was Nina's voice. His face was as dark as water. After exchanging glances with Zhehai, he kicked open the locked wooden door and rushed in. As soon as he entered the cellar, a strong smell of blood hit his nose. Grote was covered in blood, holding a whip and a butcher knife in his hands, and his face was particularly ferocious. In front of him, two bloody figures hugged each other tightly. No part of their bodies was intact, and their white clothes were dyed blood red. The breath of the two of them was already very weak. And behind them, deep in the cellar, Chu Ming looked around, his pupils were shaking, and he saw a hellish scene. Under the dim candlelight, countless pieces of blood-red flesh and severed limbs were hung upside down on blood-stained iron hooks. The shadows of flesh and blood twisted and swayed on the wall like reptiles. Blood dripped slowly, the ground was covered with a layer of black pulp, and maggots crawled all over the ground. The young man's expression changed drastically, and suddenly a stench hit him, lingering on the tip of his nose. "The entire cellar is like a hellish slaughterhouse. Eat human, brute." Chu Ming couldn't restrain his anger, and before he could speak, he grabbed his throat and threw him to the ground. Only the sound of broken bones was heard in Grote's body, black blood seeped out, and the floor could not withstand the huge force and cracked. Listen to my explanation." Grote's eyes were full of fear and he struggled feebly. "Explain." Chu Ming roared loudly. I am forced. If I don't provide them with flesh and blood, I will die." After calming down a little, Chu Ming asked sharply, "Who are they?" Grote struggled, but when he saw Chu Ming's wild eyes like a wild beast, he panicked and directly revealed all the people behind the scenes. "The nobles of the royal capital." Click. As soon as Grote finished speaking, his neck was broken by Chu Ming. "Master, she is dying." At this time, Zhehai's anxious voice came from the side. Chu Ming's chest heaved violently and he was breathing heavily. He came to Zhehai and picked up the two people who were bloody. "Don't worry, I'll take you to the doctor now." "No." Nina raised her bloody face and used all her strength to grab Chu Ming's arm. "I can't do it anymore. Mr. Andrew, please, save my sister." Chu Ming glanced at the girl in Nina's arms and shook his head with a heavy heart. "I'll take you to the doctor. Save my sister, thank you." Nina's palm gradually became weak. She let go of Chu Ming's arm, and closed her eyes forever. Chu Ming's eyes turned red and he sighed. He can't save anyone. The girl in the arms of the maid Nina has already lost the breath of life, but she doesn't know it. Master. Zhehai held the sword tightly, feeling extremely uncomfortable. Follow me and burn this sinful place. Chu Ming took out the girl's body and set fire to the entire manor with Zhehai. In the morning, the sky is slightly bright. Coastside. After burying the body in a nearby hill, Chu Ming inserted a stone tablet. The sea breeze blew and he sat on the beach for a long time. Looking at the vigorous morning sun rising in the east, the young man slowly exhaled. Zhehai, let's go. Zhehai was stunned for a moment. Where are you going? Go to the royal capital. Midsummer of Dark Age 8413. In the first week after leaving Portutello, the two finally arrived in the royal capital and entered Niho College. Over the course of a week, the bloodshed at the Portutello slaughterhouse faded a lot in their minds, leaving only some indelible traces. The dean's office of Niho College in the royal capital. Chu Ming is now in the dean's room, submitting the admission notice to Dean Monroe. Andrew. Dean Monroe sat on a dark brown wooden chair, holding his eyes and looking at him in surprise. I didn't expect that a descendant of the Black Snake Great Knight Roman would be so capable. A 16-year-old official knight is simply unbelievable. The dean is too praiseworthy. Chu Ming bent down and said a polite word, but did not get close to Monroe because of it. Because he could feel the deadly aura coming from Monroe's body. This power was profound and terrifying, far exceeding Lyle's. Monroe smiled softly, as if he didn't notice Chu Ming's alienation. I have already taken care of your enrollment. Please take this letter and give it to Instructor Lawrence in the library. He will arrange matters related to your cultivation. Thank you, Dean. Chu Ming took the letter and did not dare to stay long. He chatted with Monroe for a few words and planned to leave. Before leaving, Monroe gave a meaningful reminder. Practice well with Master Lawrence and don't move around to avoid unnecessary trouble for yourself. Chu Ming was stunned, nodded, and exited the dean's office. After a while, Monroe walked to the old wooden window and kept staring at Chu Ming and the two people who were gradually receding downstairs. Monroe, he seems to have discovered something. A voice suddenly came from the room, and the shadow in the corner of the dean's room twisted and turned into a black crow. The Black Snake family has always been so keen. Monroe looked away and sighed. The genius knight is still not contaminated. It's really troublesome. Forget it, let this guy Lawrence worry. Life or death has nothing to do with me. Black Crow was still for a while and then asked, if those nobles find out. It's okay, the most terrifying Lawrence has become a cripple. In their eyes, the so-called genius is nothing more than that. Hearing this, the Black Crow lowered his head. Walking on the stone road, Zhehai's mood was obviously much better than 3 days ago. He smiled at Chu Ming and said, I didn't expect that the dean of the royal capital, such a big shot, would be so polite in his words. That's quite polite. Chu Ming nodded. With Monroe's strength, he didn't eat them both alive on the spot. That would be too polite. Thinking of this, Chu Ming felt vaguely worried. The entire capital of Rodan Kingdom, not only the nobles, but also Niho Academy, known as the Holy Land of Knights, has been infiltrated to this extent. Monroe, the great knight of the Violent Bear, was once one of the symbols of knight's glory, but now he has become the claws of the troll. There are probably not many normal humans left in this academy who are tutors and students. To Lawrence, Chu Ming picked up the letter and silently read the words on the envelope. As long as I can get the Great Knight's secret training method from Lawrence, then this Dragon's Pond and Tiger's Den will be worth it. The worst case scenario is that we'll reopen it. Next time, we'll train to the rank of Great Knight in Black Snake Town before going out to explore. While the young man was thinking, Zhehai, who was standing by him, saw the sad look on his face and asked with concern. Master, are you okay? Chu Ming came back to his senses and shook his head. It's okay, it has nothing to do with you. He put away the worry on his face and looked at Zhehai with a sigh, looking around like a curious baby. It's better not to know too much. For you, the truth of the world is too disappointing. The two walked for 10 minutes, under the guidance of the college students, to a 2-story dilapidated library building deep in the college. As soon as I walked to the door of the library, the first thing I saw was the old desks and other scrapped training armor piled randomly beside the corridor. The whole building is surrounded by debris and waste. It doesn't look like a library building, but more like a waste collection place. Chu Ming couldn't help but frown. Zhehai scratched his head and said in confusion, Master, this place seems not quite right. Are we going to the wrong place? You'll find out once you go in and take a look. Chu Ming kicked away the scraps blocking the way, stepped forward and knocked lightly on the wooden door. Is Mr. Lawrence here? The two stood quietly at the door and waited for a while, but there was no movement inside. Chu Ming frowned and shouted again, Mr. Lawrence, I am a new student in the college. Dean Monroe asked me to come to you. As if Monroe's name had an effect, a burst of unexplained laughter came from inside. Monroe, ha, come in. After getting the response, Chu Ming pushed open the wooden door. In the library building, the doors and windows were closed and it was dark. With the help of the light pouring in from the wooden door, Chu Ming passed through the rows of bookshelves and found Lawrence lying on the chair beside the counter as if he had fallen asleep. The old man smacked his lips, as if gibbering. Looking at the sloppy old man, Zhehai sniffed suspiciously and whispered in Chu Ming's ear, Master, why do I smell a smell of urine? As soon as he finished speaking, Lawrence, who was lying on the chair, slowly opened his eyes. If Monroe has anything to do with me, tell me immediately. If you don't tell me, get out. Unexpectedly, the old man's temper was so hot. Chu Ming was stunned for a moment, but he didn't feel a dangerous aura from the old man, so he didn't pay much attention and took out the letter and handed it over. This is what Dean Monroe asked me to give to you. Lawrence took the letter, half squinted his eyes, and read the content. After a while, as if he saw something ridiculous in the letter, he suddenly sneered. A 16-year-old official knight. Genius. He glanced at Chu Ming with a scrutinizing gaze, and sarcastically said without mercy, he is just a speculator who gains strength by relying on mixed blood, and he deserves to be called a genius. You old thing, can't you talk properly? Zhehai beside him couldn't stand the old man's bad temper, so he raised his fists and was about to beat him. Zhehai, stop. Chu Ming stopped Zhehai's behavior, turned to look at the old man, and said solemnly, my strength today is all due to my own efforts. If you don't believe me, you can refuse to accept me as a student. I'm sure there will be other mentors interested in me. Lawrence narrowed his eyes and did not continue to speak, but just threw an inconspicuous scroll on the counter. This is. Chu Ming took the scroll, and the pages of the history book floating beside him were moving without wind, glowing with golden light, and there were some new contents on them. Griffin's secret technique incomplete. Quality, dark green. Skills, King's Wind, life enhancement advanced. Lawrence explained slowly and unhurriedly. Griffins, ancient magical creatures, are the bringers of storms and the kings of the sky. The power of the secret technique of the griffin comes from the griffin. After cultivating it to the depths, it can control the strong wind and regain the majesty of the king of the air. Chu Ming's eyes lit up slightly when he heard this, and the previous unhappiness was temporarily forgotten by him. The king's wind and the troll's bloodline pressure are both coercive skills. If they can offset each other, it will be much easier to deal with the troll. Haha, don't be too happy too early. Lawrence did not forget to mock. With your talent, it is almost impossible to learn this secret method. Chu Ming put away the secret method and did not refute. Although I don't know how Lawrence could see his poor talent and mixed race status at a glance, Lawrence is actually right. Andrew's talent is actually not good at all, it can even be said to be bad. However, Lawrence would have never imagined that the knight in front of him, who was not very talented, was actually a ruthless guy who could cheat. Chu Ming put away the secret method and thanked him. Lawrence glanced at him and said, don't thank me. You can figure out the secret method yourself. Don't expect me to teach you. Also, help me tell Monroe not to disturb me. After speaking, Lawrence struggled to push himself up and slid down to the floor. It was only then that Chu Ming discovered that the old man's legs were as thin as skin and bones, and the leg bones were twisted in abnormal postures, as if he had suffered inhuman abuse. What else are you looking at? Help me push the wheelchair. Without raising his head, Lawrence reached out with difficulty to reach for the wheelchair not far away. Chu Ming pulled the wheelchair closer and helped the old man up. Lawrence glanced at him and pushed the wheelchair deeper. There are many rooms in this library. You can choose yours to live in, but you are not allowed to go to the second floor and you are not allowed to make any noise. Otherwise, just pack your things and get out. After saying that, the old man disappeared into the darkness. When the old man walked away, Heikai couldn't help complaining. Master, this old man is really annoying. Chu Ming pinched his chin and replied casually, my temper is a bit stinky, but at least it makes me feel at ease. Can you feel uneasy? It's hard to find a normal human being in this human academy full of trolls and crazy knights. Although he does have many faults, at least he won't stab him in the back. Let's go and clean up the room. We are going to live here for a long time. It's easy to enter this royal capital, but it's difficult to get out. After spending a day packing everything, Chu and Ming returned to the library after going out for a meal. As soon as he returned to the door, he noticed a sneaky young student suddenly appearing next to the wooden door, constantly peeking his head inside. What are you doing? Chu Ming shouted in a deep voice. The young student was so frightened by this sudden drink that he almost fell down while stepping on the scrap pile. After he stabilized his body, he turned his head and looked at Chu Ming with anger on his face. When he saw the boy's overly young face, he immediately recognized Chu Ming's identity. He was frightened and became angry under pressure, and he smiled and approached. Are you the new junior student Andrew here today? My name is Haji, you can call me Senior Haji. But before he even got close, Chu Ming felt the disgusting aura of the dark creature from his body. I'm not interested in your name, just tell me what you have to say. Chu Ming took a step back and looked directly at him. Haji smiled awkwardly. Hey, Junior, you must have met that old man today. I couldn't stand his bad temper before, so I switched to Tutor Andy. I wonder, Junior, if you are interested in changing your tutor. No, Senior, please come back. Chu Ming refused forcefully, turned around and walked into the library. The fake smile on Haji's face gradually stiffened, revealing his true temperament. He blushed and cursed. If it wasn't for the request of Teacher Andy, I wouldn't even bother to take a look at a fool like you. You just die here with that crippled old man. Chu Ming paused and turned to look at Haji. What did you say? Haji continued to laugh wildly and taunted. Ha ha ha, I just scared your dear instructor Lawrence this morning, and he peed his pants. Ha ha ha, are you angry? Why do some people always like to dance faces? Chu Ming shook his head, and then waved his fist with thunderous force. Boom, there was a loud noise, Haji's face was distorted, his eyes rolled out, and he smashed into the pile of old things. I just want to practice quietly, why are you causing trouble for me? Chu Ming slowly approached Haji with the terrifying aura of a tiger biting people. The young man looked horrified and even knelt and crawled, trying to get away from Chu Ming. Just when he was about to take action again, Lawrence's voice came from the library. That's enough, Andrew, let him go. Why? Chu Ming grabbed Haji's neck and looked at the old man, wanting an explanation. Lawrence walked out of the library and took a deep breath, because his mentor is Andy, and you can't beat him. I have some grudges with him, please don't get involved. Chu Ming frowned. Does Dean Monroe not care? Lawrence gave him a deep look and said, Monroe can't control it. Did you hear that? Ha ha ha. Haji mocked with a bruised face. Andrew, don't think I don't know your identity. Be smart and follow the example of Master Lawrence. Make your body dirty and smelly, so no one will want to eat you. Chu Ming said nothing and strangled Haji's neck hard. Yeah, Haji's hands and feet were trembling, his face was purple, and his eyes seemed to be squeezed out. Teacher Lawrence, what is Andy's strength? Faced with Chu Ming's question, Lawrence sighed, approach the great knight. Chu Ming was stunned and threw the Haji in his hand like garbage. To be close to the great knight is to be close to the strength of dark green. The black snake knight's strength is only green. At present, it seems that he cannot be defeated and can only escape. But, Chu Ming looked at the griffin secret technique on his waist. Lawrence naturally saw what he was thinking. Although he still didn't think highly of Chu Ming, it was rare that he didn't ridicule him this time. You have to think clearly about the consequences of taking action. I'm just a beast with all my teeth and claws stripped off, a toy for people to play with. I can provide them with more fun alive than dead. But you are different. Understood. Chu Ming turned to look at Jai Hai. Jai Hai, come with me and beat him. I want him to crawl back tonight. Okay. Jai Hai, who was about to make a move, his eyes lit up and he slowly approached Haji. No, do not want. Ah, the sound of pain resounded throughout the world. Haji did crawl back that night. But the strange thing is that his mentor Andy did not come to the door because of this. Instead, Haji completely disappeared, as if he had disappeared from the world. No one disturbed him, and Chu Ming was happy to have some time to relax and began to practice the Griffin's secret technique. Lawrence regained his venomous tongue after that day, but the relationship between him and Chu Ming was no longer as stiff as before. With Chu Ming's protection, no one without a good eye would dare to come and make a fool of themselves. After all, Haji was a lesson learned from the past. The old man also lived a lot more comfortably. On this day, Chu Ming practiced as usual. It has been a year since he entered Niho College. Over the past year, with the help of historical records, Chu Ming practiced diligently day and night, and with the blessing of ethereal inspiration, he made rapid progress and gradually reached the threshold of a great knight. But just such a step has blocked many knights. Some knights even spent their entire lives unable to break through to the great knight. Even if Chu Ming had the help of historical records, this step would still be very difficult. This is because there is a world of difference between a great knight and an ordinary knight. Ordinary knights are still in the stage of training their energy and blood and enhancing their life, while the great knight has already involved the mysterious spiritual realm. Effort is completely useless. Only true genius can cross this mountain. Seeing Chu Ming's expression of embarrassment, Lawrence, who was lying aside basking in the sun, was secretly surprised by his speed of progress but instinctively began to laugh at him. Isn't it already hard enough for the great knight? I advise you to return to Black Snake Town as soon as possible. You are not suitable here. Let me tell you one more thing. Even the great knight is no match for some trolls. Chu Ming paused and continued training. So what? Lawrence was silent for a moment. Don't you feel hopeless? Chu Ming chuckled and said, despair is reserved for the enemy, not for yourself. When Lawrence heard this, he smiled happily, turned over in his chair, and squinted at the bright sun. He suddenly said, Andrew, I am leaving the royal capital the day after tomorrow, and I need you to follow me. Chu Ming put away his sword, wiped his sweat and asked, what are you going to do? Just think that I am collecting magic materials to recover from my leg injury, and don't worry about anything else. What if I said, I don't want to go out? Chu Ming lowered his head to clean his sword, his expression focused. In fact, it would be a lie to say that he didn't want to leave the royal capital. Chu Ming's purpose in coming to the royal capital was to find the secret method that would allow him to become a great knight. Now that the Griffin's secret technique is in hand, there is no need to stay in the dangerous capital where dark creatures are rampant. If it weren't for the other tainted tutors and students who were staring at him and unable to find an opportunity to escape, he wouldn't have been able to stay for a minute. Lawrence obviously understood Chu Ming's temperament. Besides practicing every day, this kid just wanted to escape. How could he not want to go out? Saying this is just to make him angry. Haha, kid, I won't force you either. Lawrence slowly rose from his chair. I have a way to leave the royal capital, but it's a pity that you don't cooperate. I originally wanted to teach you my secret cultivation experience on the way. Before Lawrence could finish speaking, he was interrupted by Chu Ming. Teacher Lawrence, let's leave the day after tomorrow. His expression remained unchanged, as if he was not the one who objected just now. Okay, since you want to go out, help me pack my luggage. Chu Ming helped Lawrence into the wheelchair, and the two walked into the library. Lawrence pointed to the dark corridor and said, let's go to the second floor. Chu Ming looked surprised. Having been with this old guy for a year, Chu Ming remembered that he never let anyone go to the second floor. Moreover, Lawrence would often stay upstairs for several days without coming down, without eating or taking a shower. Every time, he would be so hungry that he would come down and ask Chu Ming for a bite of food. Why are you still standing there? Just go up when I tell you. Lawrence patted the armrest dissatisfied. Chu Ming nodded, picked up the old man and walked up. With his strong sense of perception, he can easily see obstacles on the stairs in the dark and avoid them. The two of them went up to the second floor, and there was a door at the end of the corridor. The old man picked up the keychain in the dark and opened the door skillfully. The dim light diffused from the door, and inside was a utility room the size of a classroom. Surprisingly, used books were piled up randomly on one side of the classroom, like a garbage dump. The other side was extremely clean, with countless glass bottles arranged on the table, and some strange equipment that seemed to be used to extract some kind of liquid. On the table in the middle, a bottle of potion emitted a soft red light. The light shone on Chu Ming, and he felt an inexplicable throbbing in his heart. He was secretly surprised. After staying here for a year, he never seemed to know what the old man was doing, let alone what this bottle of Hongyu potion was. What's this? Medicine to treat leg injuries. Lawrence hesitated, then pointed to the medicine and equipment on the table and said, "Call your little follower here. I need to take all these things with me before leaving." Calling Jai Hai, the two packed up their things under Lawrence's command. One day later, Chu Ming and Jai Hai carefully brought back the 2 horses kept in the academy's stables. They planned to take Lawrence away early tomorrow morning when there would be the fewest people around. As for what to do if someone finds out, it depends on what the old man said about how to leave. But before the two of them could return to the library downstairs, a burst of noise could be heard. Chu Ming was stunned for a moment. Is this Lawrence quarreling with someone else? Thinking of Lawrence's weak body, his heart suddenly tightened, and he didn't care about covering up the movement. He directly threw the reins to Jai Hai and ran back quickly. "Lawrence, how are you doing lately?" As soon as Chu Ming returned to the library, he saw a middle-aged man in gorgeous clothes with a smile on his face and performing aristocratic etiquette on Lawrence. Just when he thought he had misunderstood something, he saw Lawrence with a dark face and roaring loudly. "Andy, get out of here. Andy!" Chu Ming's heart moved, and he quickly stepped forward and blocked the old man behind him. Andy seemed not to notice the wariness in the young man's eyes and smiled softly. "Isn't this Mr. Andrew? Good evening." Chu Ming stared into his eyes. "Are you here for Haji?" No, you misunderstood." Andy shrugged. "That trash alone doesn't make me come here. I'm just here to catch up with old friends." "You're right, Lawrence." Lawrence obviously didn't agree with him and said sarcastically, "I can't make friends with dirty dark creatures. What's more, he is still a loser who can't even advance to become a great knight after falling into darkness." Andy's smile froze, the calmness on his face disappeared, and his eyes became gloomy. He smiled sinisterly and said, "Haha, I am definitely no match for His Highness the Great Knight of the Griffin. It's just a pity that your time has passed. A 27-year-old great knight. Ha ha ha, he's just a waste now. Before the age of 27, you had endless glory, received all the glory in the world, were arrogant and domineering, and looked down on everyone." The expression on Andy's face became more and more crazy, and his eyes almost popped out. "How much I admired you before, how much I hate you now. Because of your rubbish comment back then, I was left in the cold by the academy to this day. But fate seems to like playing tricks on people. His legs were broken by Monroe while he was still alive. Lawrence, you definitely wouldn't have thought that you would end up like this, ha ha ha. Did Dean Monroe hit him?" Chu Ming's mind moved and he looked at the old man's curled legs. Lawrence was unmoved, sneered and spat at him. "Waste is waste, even now, it is waste." Andy put away his excited expression and glared over. "Old man, if a smelly bird hadn't been pestering me this past year, I should have come to visit you long ago. It was my mistake to allow you to live comfortably for one more year. But it seems it's not too late." Andy glanced at Jai Hai and the 2 horses he had just brought back, and sneered, "Where do you want to go? I won't bother you. You should pay more attention to that smelly bird you mentioned." As soon as Lawrence finished speaking, a shadow appeared out of thin air beside him, black light gathered, and a black crow stood on his shoulder. "It turns out you ordered this stinky bird." Andy was stunned, anger rising on his face. "Lawrence, why do you always do this to me?" The man scratched his face in pain, his nails grew wildly, and his skin peeled off his body, turning into an ugly monster in an instant. The monster roared angrily, turned around and punched Lawrence. Black Crow tilted his head and asked Lawrence, "Do you need me to take action?" "No need." Lawrence turned to look at Chu Ming. "Kill him and I will teach you all my skills." Chu Ming nodded and leapt forward, leaving an afterimage on the spot. Dust flew everywhere, and the boy caught the man's fist on the spot. No matter how the troll on the opposite side roared, it could not escape his control. Now that he has reached the threshold of a great knight, and with the increase in physical strength caused by the blood of the black snake, he naturally does not need to be as afraid of Andy as he was a year ago, and he does not dare to kill Haji. Now he has no inhibitions. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.